Chapter 375. That person laughed. Head sure, just wait and see. It's easy to meet in the East. The great Luo Empire wants to become an upper-ranking empire, but I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse. How could it be that easy? In the human countries, how many years have the three upper-ranking empires lasted? Shi Chenglong said with surprise. What do you mean? What do I mean? You will know when the time comes, ha ha ha. After that person had finished speaking, he ignored Shi Chenglong's suspicious face and walked past him towards the inn. Shi Chenglong felt disappointed and frustrated as his heart became even more confused. This person seemed to be talking without thinking, but from time to time, he would say a few words that sounded very serious, so Shi Chenglong had no choice but to believe him. Just when Shi Chenglong walked out of the balcony with suspicion, a golden figure suddenly crawled out from the balcony. A thoughtful expression appeared on his little furry head. Suddenly, he tilted his head and rolled his eyes. No, I must tell this news to Boss Wushuang. Indeed, this little thing was Bao Bao. Initially, Bao Bao had received Qin Wushuang's order to monitor each and every movement of the dragon and tiger sect. Bao Bao's concealment skills were top-notch. He had concealed himself at the inn where the dragon and tiger sect was staying. From beginning to end, he had grasped all movements of the sect. Of course, Bao Bao would not let go of Shi Chenglong's visit to this mysterious person. From beginning to end, he had heard everything clearly. He twisted his body and disappeared from the balcony. Currently, Qin Wushuang was at one of the restaurants and gathering with his fellow countrymen from the Baiyu country. Currently, the atmosphere was thick. Tong Yen was especially lively. Everyone, our martial arts students from the Baiyu country, are truly proud and elated. Now, in the great Luo Empire, when the other subordinate countries heard the name of the Baiyu country, they would no longer bully us like they did in the past. To be honest, all of this is not because of us, but because of Marquis Wushuang. Do you all agree with my words? Simon Xing and the others all clapped their hands and laughed. Tong Yen, you are right. Without Wushuang, how could we have the superior position in the sect? Wan Jinpeng and He Zichong both nodded. Now, they naturally already had a feeling of looking up at Qin Wushuang. Thinking back to the competition during the martial arts student exam, everything seemed like a dream. Thinking back, it had only been 3 years. However, so many changes had occurred in these 3 years. However, Qin Wushuang said, everyone, here, only the disciples of the Baiyu country are here. It's okay to speak these words. However, you must not speak these words at the sect. It would be disadvantageous to our Baiyu if someone with bad intentions heard it. Tong Yao had a steady personality as she nodded. Marquis Wushuang is right. Tong Yen laughed. Sister, why are you still calling him Marquis Wushuang? You and Marquis Wushuang are both disciples of the same teacher at the Green Cloud Palace. You should call each other senior and junior brothers. Tong Yao was startled. She glanced at Qin Wushuang and smiled without saying anything. Inwardly, she also felt somewhat strange. In terms of age, she was 2 or 3 years older than Qin Wushuang. However, Qin Wushuang had entered the sect earlier than her. Logically, she should call Qin Wushuang senior brother. However, Tong Yao felt that she could not say the words, senior brother. However, Qin Wushuang helped her out. Tong, you are making trouble. Tong Yen laughed. Marquis Wushuang, I am speaking the truth. Now, you guys are from the same sect. According to the rules, my sister should call you senior brother. The others all laughed and the atmosphere became lively. Suddenly, Qin Wushuang moved his feet and Bao Bao crawled out. He jumped onto Qin Wushuang's shoulder and whispered, Boss Wushuang, something happened. Immediately, he whispered a few words into his ear. Qin Wushuang's expression changed slightly. Something like this happened? Bao Bao nodded. It's true. Boss Wushuang, that person's face is ugly. However, he is very eloquent. Shi Chenglong was fooled by him and lost his soul. After a moment of silence, Qin Wushuang stood up. Everyone, there is an emergency and I need to take care of it. Today's gathering will end here. Let's meet again in the future, how about it? When these people heard that Qin Wushuang was leaving, they were somewhat disappointed. However, they also knew that Qin Wushuang carried a heavy responsibility. At the moment, they all nodded and bid farewell to Qin Wushuang. Qin Wushuang cupped his hands in a salute and walked outside. While he walked, he let out the purple flame electric beast and instructed, "You two, go to the inn and hide on the left and right. If that person escapes, you are in charge of sniping him. Remember, capture him alive. However, before this, I will go and probe the situation." Bao Bao and the purple flame electric beast knew the importance of this matter. They both nodded and disappeared into the sky. Qin Wushuang walked directly towards the Inn of the Dragon and Tiger sect. Using Bao Bao's information, Qin Wushuang soon found the room where that strange guest was staying. Qin Wushuang put on a mask and walked over. He knocked on the door and a low shout came from inside. "Who is it?" Qin Wushuang sent his voice. "Disciple of the Dragon and Tiger sect, invites you to discuss some matters." That person laughed coldly. "What, Shi Chenglong has thought it through?" Qin Wushuang gave a casual yes. Just as that person was about to open the door, he suddenly stopped. Suddenly, a sense of alertness emerged in his head. "No, I seem to have heard this person's voice somewhere before." A sense of alertness emerged from the heart of that strange guest as he could not help but stop his footsteps. "Where have I heard it before? Where?" He thought quickly and suddenly, he remembered someone and was shocked. "It's him, Qin Wushuang, disciple of the Stargaze Palace." When he thought here, this person's chest heaved up and down rapidly. Instantly, a monstrous hatred rushed to his head. He gripped the weapon on his waist lightly and wanted to go out and kill Qin Wushuang. "No!" That strange guest immediately restrained this impulse. "I must not do this." That Qin Wushuang was able to destroy my archaic mysteries sect. Even my teacher and those heads were not his opponent. Although I have entered the advanced stage, I am not as strong as my teacher and the others. This Qin Wushuang also has a beast as his companion. I must not fight him. When he thought here, this person calmed himself down and slowly opened the door. He wanted to see what tricks this Qin Wushuang was playing. How could he claim to be a disciple of the Dragon and Tiger sect? When he opened the door, he saw an unfamiliar face. It was completely different from the Qin Wushuang he had met at the friendly competition. Although this person was somewhat astonished, he immediately understood. This Qin Wushuang is wearing a mask, he is indeed cunning. He said calmly, "Where is head Shi? Take me to him." Although he knew that this person was Qin Wushuang, he did not expose him. Instead, he beat him at his own game. Qin Wushuang said with a smile, "Please follow me." After he had finished speaking, he walked downstairs. That person walked to the corridor and said, "Isn't head Shi inside the inn? Why did he go downstairs?" Qin Wushuang said leisurely, "Head Shi changed his mind and decided to go to a safe place. There are many eyes and ears here." Inwardly, that person's heart jumped and he cursed inwardly. Since this Qin Wushuang had spoken like this, did he know that he had met Shi Chenglong? Could it be that Shi Chenglong had sold him out this quickly? Darn it! Inwardly, this strange guest cursed Shi Chenglong's 8 generations of ancestors. Initially, he thought that as long as Shi Chenglong had some brains and backbone, he would not have sold out the content of their conversation. Unexpectedly, in the blink of an eye, disciples of the Stargaze Palace had come to their door. Without a doubt, Shi Chenglong had exposed him. Or else, how could he have been exposed this quickly? He never thought that Bao Bao had eavesdropped on the entire conversation between him and Shi Chenglong. "What, you were quite bold earlier and spoke with a big tone. Why are you shrinking back now?" Qin Wushuang asked lightly. That person said with a stern voice, "You are not a disciple of the Dragon and Tiger sect." Qin Wushuang laughed leisurely. "How do you know?" that person said. This time, the Dragon and Tiger sect sent 10 disciples. I have paid attention to them, and there is no such person like you. Who are you? Qin Wushuang laughed. Who am I? Won't you know if you come with me? That person said with shame. I don't know your background, forgive me for not being able to follow you. Qin Wushuang said coldly. You are not going? No. That person shook his head. Unless you tell me who you are. Qin Wushuang laughed. Since you are not going, let's talk here. How about it on that balcony? You don't even have the courage to talk to me, right? Inwardly, this person was somewhat nervous. However, he also knew that he had to hold on. Or else, once his true identity was exposed, he would fall into the trap. It would not matter if he died here. However, there would be no hope for the inheritance of the Archaic Mysteries sect. When he thought here, this person threw away all distracting thoughts and walked towards that balcony with Qin Wushuang. Speak, what do you want to talk about? That person said lightly. I don't want to talk nonsense. I just want to know who you are. What kind of evil intentions did you have when you advised Headshur? If you cannot answer me, don't even think about leaving this inn today. Qin Wushuang said with a light tone, yet his temperament was extremely cold. He deliberately activated his temperament and covered the entire inn with his temperament. This way, it would be impossible for Shi Chenglong and the others to pretend to not know anything. That person said with a cold sneer, Are you trying to force me to confess? No, I just want to let you know your situation. Either you speak the truth, or you die. It's that simple. That person laughed madly. Die? You dare to kill me? Give me a reason not to. Qin Wushuang said lightly. First, my identity is unknown. If the Stargaze Palace wants to dominate the East, you must face some powerhouses in the human countries. If you dare to offend these powerhouses, you will not be able to continue your path of domination. Second, if you kill me, the truth about that spiritual key of the Archaic Mysteries sect will never be revealed. There was a trace of wildness in this person's tone. Apparently, he was taking a risk. He also knew that in today's situation, if his identity was exposed, he would die for sure. Apart from using some favorable conditions to deal with them, he had no other choice. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 376. Qin Wushuang did not speak. Instead, he sized this person from head to toe. I heard that behind your hood, you have an extremely ugly face, right? That person said proudly. If you want to guess my background from my face, I advise you to give up. No. Qin Wushuang laughed. I don't plan to know your background. Even if you have a great background, to me, you are trying to sow discord between the Stargaze and the Dragon and Tiger sect within the Great Luo Empire. You want to destroy this Eastern Alliance meeting. This is a capital offense. Although that person was nervous, he laughed madly. Such big words, are you not afraid that the 9 Palace, 9 Raven Temple, and the Emperor Buddha Palace will join forces to attack you? Qin Wushuang asked with a cold sneer. Do you think you have the power to make the 3 upper-ranking empires join forces to attack the Stargaze Palace for you? Haha, that might not be the case. These 3 upper-ranking empires do not wish to see a rising Great Luo. They do not wish to see a powerful Great Luo. If we add some benefits, most likely they will join forces. Qin Wushuang let out a carefree laugh. Even so, I still decided to kill you. As he spoke, he shook the long whip in his hand. Indeed, it was the Fury Dragon Soul. As soon as this void martial stage weapon was shaken out, the entire inn was suppressed by this aura. It was filled with a sense of oppression and suffocation. Qin Wushuang said leisurely, Headshur, and all the heads of the Dragon and Tiger sect, you guys have been watching for a long time. If you want to watch the show, come out. Shi Chenglong and the others were stunned and inwardly, they felt apprehensive. Shi Chenglong even recognized Qin Wushuang's voice as he said to the others, "This kid is Qin Wushuang from the Stargaze Palace." Those leaders who had never heard Qin Wushuang's voice and had never seen Qin Wushuang were all shocked. Wasn't this Qin Wushuang a disciple of the younger generation? How could he have such powerful temperament? Headshur, you two were chatting happily earlier. This person has been bewitching you for a long time. Now that he refuses to admit it, I want you to be the witness. Qin Wushuang smiled. With that said, Shi Chenglong and the others couldn't hide even if they wanted to. Shi Chenglong laughed out loud. I was wondering who it was. So it's nephew Qin Wushuang. Nephew's aura is strong, it seems like your skills have improved. As he spoke, he laughed heartily as he walked out of the inn and onto the balcony. Qin Wushuang nodded from afar. Dragon Headshur, it's inconvenient for me to salute you now. Please forgive me. Shi Chenglong smiled and said, You're welcome. Nephew Wushuang, this person is deceiving the public with his lies. Earlier, he came to me and said a lot of frightening words to incite the dragon and tiger sect to cause trouble. However, a certain someone didn't believe his nonsense. He ignored it. At this moment, Chenglong was extremely cunning. When he saw the development of the situation, he knew that the Stargaze Palace had eavesdropped on their conversation. Thus, he decided to add insult to injury and protect the dragon and tiger sect. A moment ago, when he was talking to this person, he had already left some leeway. Thus, from those words, there was not a trace of dissatisfaction towards the Stargaze Palace. Thus, from his point of view, it was easy to disassociate the dragon and tiger sect. After all, a moment ago, he did not speak a single bad word about the Stargaze Palace and did not show any intention of getting along well with them. Thinking about it now, he felt somewhat fortunate. Qin Wushuang knew that Shi Chenglong was in a hurry to disassociate himself from the dragon and tiger sect. Instantly, he laughed. Dragon Headshur is an understanding person. For this point, the Stargaze Palace knows very well. Only, no matter how frightening this guy is, we need you to expose him. This way, the Stargaze Palace can execute the law justifiably and let him die without any complaints. Currently, Shi Chenglong only wanted to protect himself. Instantly, he spoke the contents of that person's conversation in full detail. Qin Wushuang had heard most of these contents from Bao Bao. Now, when he listened to it again, he found some new information. It was the part where Bao Bao did not tell him everything. Did you hear that? Dragon Headshur is an elite warrior. He would not wrongly accuse you, right? The man spat and said angrily, A master of a generation? How could he deserve to be called an elite warrior? Cowardly and willing to compromise. I am afraid that even so, the Stargaze Palace would not let go of the dragon and tiger sect. Ha ha ha. Shi Chenglong, do you think you can get on the good side of the Stargaze Palace by betraying me? Shi Chenglong showed an embarrassed expression. Of course, he did not betray him. However, he could not deny it before Qin Wushuang. Or else, it would appear that the dragon and tiger sect did not report the information. However, in the end, the older the ginger, the spicier it was. Shi Chenglong rolled his eyes and said, Humph, for this matter, I plan to tell Headshua during the alliance meeting. However, since Junior Wushuang has rushed here, I think you exposed yourself. You can't blame anyone. That person was surprised. You didn't betray me? Qin Wushuang said with a smile. This is to say, if you don't want people to know, don't do it in the first place. If I wanted to know your each and every move, why would I need others to tell on you? That person's body trembled slightly. If Shi Chenglong did not betray him, then it would be terrifying if Qin Wushuang knew about this matter. The information-gathering ability of the Stargaze Palace was this powerful? Humph, Qin Wushuang, are you Qin Wushuang from the Stargaze Palace? In fact, this person recognized Qin Wushuang. However, at this moment, he was pretending to be a fool. In fact, it was his scheme to prevent his identity from being exposed. Qin Wushuang laughed coldly. So what if I am? However, Shi Chenglong laughed. Junior Wushuang, your original face is much more handsome than this. Why wear a mask? Ha ha, head Shi, of course I should show my original face when dealing with honest people. However, when dealing with such despicable people, I will show my mask. Shi Chenglong laughed heartily. Nephew, you are truly wise. That person thought quickly. Since Shi Chenglong is so cunning, it seems he does not have the backbone to resist the Stargaze Palace. Now I must protect my life. Even if I have to sell the spiritual key to the Nine Raven and the Sky Travel Empire, I will form an alliance to conquer the Stargaze Palace. I will not let them have a good life. This person was Luo Guiyun, the direct disciple of Gao Yu, the head of the Archaic Mysteries sect. Initially, he had been sent to the Nine Palace to further his studies. Besides Luo Guiyun, the other disciples had returned to the Archaic Mysteries sect with Gao Yu. At that time, Luo Guiyun was at the crucial moment of breaking into the advanced stage. Thus, he did not return to the team and escaped death. After the Archaic Mysteries sect had been destroyed, Luo Guiyun had escaped from the Nine Palace immediately. He returned to the Archaic Mysteries sect and took the spiritual key. He was the head disciple of Gao Yu and knew the location of the spiritual key. Fortunately, that spiritual key was not hidden in those palaces of the Archaic Mysteries sect. It was hidden in a mysterious and hidden place behind the mountain. In fact, Gao Yu had designed it this way because he was worried that some elite warrior would break into the Archaic Mysteries sect and steal the spiritual key. Because of this design, it allowed Luo Guiyun to take the spiritual key with ease when he returned. However, after Luo Guiyun had taken the spiritual key, he had planned to bring it to the Great Luo Empire and destroy the Eastern Alliance. Suddenly, he thought that it would be disadvantageous to bring it with him. Thus, he put the spiritual key back to its original place. And he, Luo Guiyun, had come to the Great Luo Empire alone. Initially, he wanted to trick the Dragon and Tiger sect into rebelling against the Stargaze Palace. Then, he would hook up with the people of the Nine Raven Temple and the Emperor Buddha Palace to persuade them to attack the Stargaze Palace together and suppress the rise of the Great Luo Empire in the East. Even if he had to use the spiritual key as a stepping stone, he would not hesitate. Only, as soon as he had laid out his wishful thinking, he had encountered a major setback. In the first step, he had encountered a problem at the Great Luo Empire as he was surrounded by Qin Wushuang. He could not escape. Humph, if you want to condemn someone, why worry about the pretext? Even so, it was only a few jokes between me and Head Shi to test him. Could it be that the Stargaze Palace can kill people at will with just a few words? Luo Guiyun swore to deny it. Qin Wushuang laughed. A joke? Head Shi, do you think he is joking? Shi Chenglong said with determination. No, not at all. This person harbors evil intentions. I am afraid that he not only wants to provoke the situation in the East, but also wants to stir up the entire human countries. Or else, why would he talk about the three upper-ranking empires? That person said with a cold sneer. Shi Chenglong, I have learned about your poor moral character. Shi Chenglong said lightly. Do you think someone like you is worthy to talk about moral character? Qin Wushuang nodded and said, Enough with the nonsense. Mister, if you have nothing else to say, then surrender. He rolled the Fury Dragon Soul and was about to make a move. That person waved his hand. Hold on! Stop with the nonsense. Qin Wushuang did not stop. He initiated the Fury Dragon Soul and rolled it toward that person. That person was leaning against the balcony. Suddenly, his entire body fell down. He did not hesitate to jump off the building to escape. With a cold sneer, Qin Wushuang shook the whip and chased after him with his body dancing in the air. At this moment, suddenly, a roar came from the street. A flash of lightning shot to the sky and pounced toward Luo Guiyun's falling body. As the light faded, The purple flame electric beast had already grabbed Luo Guiyun in his hand. Just as he was about to tear him in half, Qin Wushuang shouted, "Keep him alive!" Now, the purple flame electric beast remembered Qin Wushuang's previous instructions and stopped. Qin Wushuang walked closer and restrained this person's entire body. He said with a cold sneer, "Since you are here, don't think about leaving." After he had finished speaking, he cupped his hands in a salute. "Head Shi, please send my regards to the other heads." When Shi Chenglong saw Qin Wushuang's skills and that spiritual beast's lightning-fast moves, he felt disappointed and upset. When he heard Qin Wushuang's greeting, he nodded embarrassedly. "Okay. A young disciple from the Stargaze Palace. Was this exceptional? Especially that spiritual beast, it was as fast as lightning. With such power, even if Qin Wushuang cooperated with his two spiritual beast friends, it was enough to sweep away the east. Head Dragon, indeed, this Qin Wushuang is exceptional." Behind him, the voice of the head tiger sighed. The other leaders also remained silent. As they watched Qin Wushuang's leaving figure, their eyes were filled with melancholy and envy. Deep inside the corner of their eyes, some unwillingness and helplessness flashed. With such a demonic disciple, the Stargaze Palace should prosper. How could the dragon and tiger sect fight against him? When the Stargaze Palace rises, the great Luo Empire will rise. There was a hint of bitterness in Shi Chenglong's voice, but there was also a hint of warning in it. From now on, we will not have any other thoughts. All of our actions will be for the survival of Dragon Tiger Sect. Even if we have to compromise and endure humiliation, we will still do it. Everyone, do you have any objections? When the other leaders saw Qin Wushuang's power, they finally had a clear understanding of the power of the Stargaze Palace. All of them nodded coldly and did not make any more strange sounds. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 377. The instant after Qin Wushuang had taken away Luo Guiyun, two figures walked out from one of the street corners below the inn. They looked at Qin Wushuang's back coldly and one of them said, "Third, we are too late." The other person also nodded coldly. "Yes, second, this person was taken away by the Stargaze Palace and all clues have been cut off. Let's not get involved in this muddy water, right? No, let's not. One does not get up early if there are no benefits. That guy claimed to have a clue about the spiritual key and asked us to meet here. Before we even met, he was taken away by the Stargaze Palace. It's clear that he is an idiot and not someone we can scheme against. The Nine Raven Temple does not need to get involved in this trivial matter. In the Xian Yuan Mound, a forbidden spiritual zone, we don't need to scheme against that endless Eastern Sea. Yes, let's go back. Regarding how to deal with the Eastern situation, the head divinity chief should make the decision. Yes, let's go. Indeed, these two were the two divinity chiefs of the Nine Raven Temple. The divinity chiefs were the highest leaders of the Nine Raven Temple. The Nine Raven Temple had 5 divinity chiefs and each of them were at the perfect stage. Thus, the Nine Raven Temple was the strongest and the most mysterious among the upper-ranking empire. Only, the Nine Raven Temple had always given people the feeling of being mysterious and standing aloof from worldly affairs. Thus, in the human countries, despite having a high position, they had always had a good reputation. They also gave people the impression that they were kind and low-key existences. For these two, one was the second divinity chief and the other was the third. Initially, they had come here together to inquire about the situation and to see if there was any information about the spiritual key. If they could get that spiritual key from the Archaic Mysteries sect, they could make a deal with the Stargaze Palace. The reason why the Nine Raven Temple sent someone here was because before Luo Guiyun left for the Great Luo Empire, he had sent 2 secret letters. One to the Nine Raven Temple, and the other to the Emperor Buddha Palace of the Sky Travel Empire. Not long after the two divinity chiefs of the Nine Raven Temple had left, people from the Emperor Buddha Palace of the Sky Travel Empire also left quietly. They had made the same choice as the two divinity chiefs of the Nine Raven Temple. They did not plan to go against the Stargaze Palace at this moment. The rise of the Stargaze Palace was already apparent. The Nine Palace was such a powerful powerhouse, yet they had almost been destroyed by an unknown Stargaze Palace. This way, it seemed that this Stargaze Palace was not an opponent to be underestimated. Qin Wushuang grabbed that Luo Guiyun and rushed back to the Stargaze Palace at a fast speed. He felt that there was something fishy about this person's identity. He needed to investigate this person's true identity together with the other hall masters. Furthermore, from this person's tone, it seemed like he had some clues about the Tianji sect's spiritual key. Regardless of whether it was true or not, this was a signal that he could not let go of. When they returned to the Stargaze Palace, the 5 palace masters immediately gathered together after receiving the report. Qin Wushuang threw this person aside. Palace masters, this is the person who bewitched Shi Chenglong. Disciple is bold enough to capture this person. Tan Zhongqi laughed. Wushuang, nicely done. This move of yours isn't as simple as just capturing a person. I'm sure that the people from Dragon Tiger Sect are also in a daze right now. Haha. Qin Wushuang saw that this person had pulled off his cloak and mask to reveal a hideous and twisted face. When Zhuo Buchuan and the others saw this face, they all frowned. This face was too twisted and ugly. Qin Wushuang said coldly, "Mister, before the 5 palace masters, it's better to be smart. Don't play any tricks." That Luo Guiyun said with a hoarse voice, "Kill me if you want. You will regret it if you kill me, ha ha ha." Zhong Wuyin said with a cold sneer, "Do you think that the Stargaze Palace doesn't know how to kill a single person?" Luo Guiyun said viciously, "Yes, who said you don't? The Stargaze Palace killed the 9 Palace and the Archaic Mysteries sect. Who doesn't know that you are the #1 in the world?" "It's good that you know," Luo Guiyun said with a cold sneer. "Then make your move." "I am not afraid." Qin Wushuang laughed. "If you think you can save your life by provoking us, then you are naive. Palace masters, in the end, who is this person? Do you recognize him?" Suddenly, Zhuo Buchuan stopped and started to look around this person's face. Then, he turned his body around and started to look carefully from the back. After he had finished looking, he took a few steps back and looked from afar. Then, he frowned slightly. "For sure, we know this person." As soon as he said these words, not only was Tan Zhongqi and the others surprised, even Qin Wushuang could not help but look at him a few more times. Inwardly, Luo Guiyun felt even colder. Of course, he recognized this Zhuo Buchuan and knew that this person was extremely powerful. If he recognized him, then it would not be good. Luo Guiyun had a strong will. To hide his identity and completely destroy it, he did not hesitate to burn his face and create this ghostly appearance to confuse others. Only, if he did not communicate with him face to face, no one would notice his actions. However, now that he had become a prisoner and was being looked at from left to right, in the eyes of an elite warrior like Zhuo Buchuan, it was easy to reveal some flaws. Zhuo Buchuan was only probing with his words. As soon as he said these words, he stared at Luo Guiyun and suddenly, he laughed. "As I expected, for sure, we know this person." As soon as I said those words, his muscles had clearly tightened. The back of his ears twitched slightly and his pores expanded slightly. It showed that he was somewhat nervous after hearing my words. The words of the head palace master had received Qin Wushuang's approval. Head palace master is right. A moment ago, I also observed this person and he did have these reactions. It seems that this person had purposely destroyed his face to prevent us from recognizing him. This kind of thought and courage is rare. The other palace masters all laughed. With this analysis, they had a much clearer direction. Tan Zhongqi laughed. "Wushuang, in your heart, do you have any ideas?" Qin Wushuang said leisurely. After the head palace master's reminder, I think that this person should be a surviving member of the Archaic or the Nine Palace faction. It's most likely the Archaic. The other palace masters all nodded. Tan Zhongqi and Zhuobuchuan looked at each other and smiled. Inwardly, they already had a lot of guesses after they had a direction. Only they did not say it out loud. Zhuobuchuan waved his hand. Don't be in a rush to guess. Wu Shuang, from the words this person had said to Shi Chenglong, does it mean that he has confidence in that spiritual key of the Archaic? Qin Wushuang nodded and said, That's right. Zhuobuchuan lifted the tip of his foot and released this person's sealed body. He said lightly, Wu Shuang, when you went to annihilate the Archaic, do you remember who was the most exceptional person among the young generation? Among the young generation of the Archaic, one was Luo Guiyun, the other was Devil Boy. I had already killed Devil Boy, and the last one was Luo Guiyun. Luo Guiyun. When Qin Wushuang said here, he lowered his tone and started to size this person before him. Suddenly, he laughed. I suddenly remembered that when I went to annihilate the Archaic, among all the core disciples, Luo Guiyun was not there. I still found it strange. When Luo Guiyun heard their words, he knew that he could not keep his identity. With a face as pale as ash, he initiated his power and was about to commit suicide by destroying his dantian. Zhuobuchuan pointed again with the tip of his foot and sealed his body to prevent him from moving. Tan Zhongqi laughed. Such a big fish that escaped the net. This way, for sure, he knows the whereabouts of that spiritual key of the Archaic. The other palace masters all nodded. That's right, it seems that it's up to him to find that spiritual key. However, Zhuobuchuan laughed. Wu Shuang, this guy also taught Shi Chenglong how to deal with us asking for the spiritual key? Qin Wushuang laughed. That's right, he taught the Dragon and Tiger sect that to take the spiritual key of the Dragon and Tiger sect, the Stargaze must first find that key of the Archaic. Zhuobuchuan said, Good, then we will use this opportunity to ask the Dragon and Tiger sect. Let's see how Shi Chenglong answers. The other palace masters all laugh. Indeed, nothing could be better than using this opportunity to checkmate the Dragon and Tiger sect. At that time, if the Dragon and Tiger sect did not hand it over, it would mean that they had been bewitched by this person and wanted to make things difficult for them. However, if they did, they would not be satisfied. In the end, they would have to hand it over. Qin Wushuang grabbed that Luo Guiyun and said, Luo Guiyun, on that day at the friendly competition, it should also be you who had ambushed me at the cliff, right? Luo Guiyun said with a cold sneer. It was me, so what? If I had known about today's matter, I would not have been worried about exposing my identity. I should have shot you off the cliff. Qin Wushuang said coldly. Unfortunately, you did not have such decisiveness. This is called one careless move, and you have lost the whole game. Do you want to die quickly or suffer some pain before dying? Luo Guiyun said proudly. Since I have fallen into your hands, you can decide how to die. Don't even think about making me hand over the spiritual key. Do you think we can't find it if you don't tell us? Even if we have to dig 3 feet into the ground, we will find it. In the worst case, we will spend some effort. Qin Wushuang said with a cold sneer. Inwardly, Luo Guiyun's heart skipped a beat. That spiritual key was at the back of the mountain. If they truly dug 3 feet into the ground, they would find it. However, his tone was relaxed and carefree. Then you can go and dig and see. Suddenly, Bao Bao jumped up and sealed all of Luo Guiyun's 5 senses. He could not hear, see, or smell anything then, he said to Qin Wushuang. Boss Wushuang, I know a secret technique called the soul scouring technique. It can enter the other party's mind and investigate their consciousness. Does no one in the Stargaze Palace know how to use this technique? Qin Wushuang looked at the 5 palace masters with suspicion. These palace masters all shook their heads slightly to show that they did not know how to use it. However, Bao Bao said, For sure, someone from the Red Maple human clan of the dispersed Praying Mountain knows this technique. Besides, I heard that the Nine Raven Temple shares a close relationship with the Red Maple human clan. Perhaps someone from the Nine Raven Temple knows this secret technique. Nine Raven Temple? Zhuo Buchuan frowned. Qin Wushuang said, Palace Masters, in this case, I will go to the Nine Raven Temple and see if I can ask for this secret technique. Zhuo Buchuan gave a long sigh. For the Stargaze Palace and the great Luo Empire to rise, I am afraid we must deal with the Nine Raven Temple. I think it will work. Hearing Zhuo Buchuan's words, the other palace masters all nodded to show their agreement. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 378. However, Tan Zhongqi said, Head Palace Master, I feel that we don't have to go to this Nine Raven Temple. With the Eastern Alliance meeting at hand, this matter is of utmost importance. Wushuang holds a special meaning to the Stargaze Palace. Even if we are to go to the Nine Raven Temple, we should wait until the situation is settled. Tan Zhongqi's suggestion made Zhuo Buchuan feel deeply reassured as he nodded. Second is right. Let's finish the Eastern Alliance meeting first. If the Eastern Alliance meeting succeeds, the Great Luo will become an upper-ranking empire soon. By that time, regardless of the Nine Raven Temple or the Emperor Buddha Palace, they will send representatives to participate. By that time, we will communicate with the people of the Nine Raven Temple. If the Great Luo wanted to become an upper-ranking empire, they must gain the recognition of the Nine Raven and the Sky Travel Empire. To gain the recognition of these two empires, they must communicate with each other. After reaching this consensus, the Stargaze Palace locked up Luo Guiyun temporarily. Finally, the Eastern Alliance meeting had begun. Outside the giant square of the Stargaze Palace, hundreds of representatives and powerhouses from all the eastern countries had gathered together. Each powerhouse had sent out all their elite warriors. Thus, the entire Stargaze Palace was bustling with noise and peace. From the palace masters to the ordinary disciples, each of them was brimming with joy as they enjoyed the joy and happiness of being the host. For the Stargaze Palace, the 5 palace masters, the 8 elders, the 16 elders, the core disciples, and the palace emissaries all stood at prominent positions. Zhuo Buchuan looked at the guests from all directions and said, Everyone, the Stargaze Palace is grateful to all the Eastern powerhouses for coming to support us. For this invitation, if we have offended you in any way, please forgive us. Most of these powerhouses wanted to curry favor with the Stargaze Palace as they all said, Palace Master Zhuo, it's a great thing for the East to have the Stargaze Palace form an alliance. Yes, we should have formed an alliance a long time ago. Yes, forming an alliance is the best way for the East to protect themselves. Of course, for this alliance we must choose a leader. I think the Stargaze Palace is the most suitable. Beneath the stage, all the powerhouses discussed spiritedly. Some of these people were sincere and some were not. However, no one dared to show the slightest disrespect to the Stargaze Palace, even if it came from the bottom of their heart or if they were just putting on a show. These people were all cunning. During this time, the situation in the eastern region was surging like a storm. The Stargaze Palace had become famous as they had defeated the Nine Palace and killed the Archaic Mysteries sect. All of these thunderous methods indicated the rise of the Stargaze Palace. And the recent series of activities from the Stargaze Palace had vividly indicated that the second step after the rise of the Stargaze Palace was to dominate the East. Dominating the East didn't have much of an impact on most of the forces here. Thus, they were not worried about the Stargaze Palace dominating the East. Initially, the 3 upper-ranking empires controlled the East. To them, it would not be a problem if the Stargaze Palace controlled the East. In fact, if a powerful force controlled the East, it could at least maintain the competitiveness of the East and drive the development of other forces in the East. Thus, among these powerhouses, 60 to 70% hoped that the Stargaze Palace could achieve their ambition of dominating the East. And if they could use the opportunity to build a good relationship with the Stargaze Palace and get some benefits from the leftovers in the East, it would be better than when the three middle-ranking empires controlled the East together. If one were to compare the East to a giant biscuit, after the three empires ate it, there would be almost nothing left for the others. And if this giant biscuit was given to an empire to eat, some leftovers would still fall out. In the end, it would depend on how they fought for the leftovers. In the worst case, it would be the same as before and they would get nothing. The remaining 30 to 40% either shared a border with the Great Luo Empire and were worried about them, or had a conflict of interest with the Great Luo Empire or held grudges with them in the past. The other type was the Vermilion Empire represented by the Dragon and Tiger sect. Initially, they were on par with the Stargaze Palace. Inwardly, they could not accept the fact that they had to submit to the Stargaze Palace. Zhuobuchuan's words caused a flurry of discussion below. When everyone's discussion had gradually stopped, Zhuobuchuan opened his mouth to speak. Everyone, this time, I invited everyone here to report some of the things that had happened in the East in recent years. After he had finished speaking, he turned around and said to Tan Zhongqi, "Second, you speak." Tan Zhongqi nodded and walked to the front. Everyone, I believe that in the eyes of many of you, not long ago, I was a dead man. That's right, a year ago, Zhao Heng of the Nine Palace had indeed shattered my dantian before the mountain gate of the Stargaze Palace. I was on the verge of death. Tan Zhongqi was full of energy as he urged the temperament of the perfect stage with his words. Instantly, his imposing manner had suppressed all the discussions. Everyone's gaze shot towards Tan Zhongqi at the same time. Their attention was completely focused on Tan Zhongqi. Many people here had heard the rumors about Tan Zhongqi. However, they did not know the exact truth. Now, when they saw Tan Zhongqi speaking himself, of course, they were extremely curious and wanted to hear the truth. Tan Zhongqi said lightly, "If it weren't for the fact that I was not destined to die, I would have been separated by life and death from everyone. Everyone, among you, how many of you are stronger than me?" Tan Zhongqi's question caused everyone to suck in a breath of cold air. They thought that Tan Zhongqi was going to show off his power. Instantly, many people held their breath. Tan Zhongqi laughed casually. "I only broke into the perfect stage not long ago. I am only talking about the time when I was injured by Zhao Heng. Even with my strength at that time, in the East, no more than 3 people would dare to say that they could beat me, right? Counting from that time, only the number 1 elite warriors of the Archaic and the Dragon and Tiger sect could beat Tan Zhongqi. Indeed, there would not be more than 3 of them." Everyone nodded. However, Tan Zhongqi said, "Even so, that Zhao Heng still injured me easily and sent me to the gates of hell. Everyone, with my strength and position in the East, under that situation, I still could not guarantee my safety. Let me ask you, if such a thing happened to any of you, ask yourself, do you think you could survive?" Tan Zhongqi's words were sharp. After he had asked these questions, his gaze also became sharp as he looked around. These people could not avoid his gaze even if they wanted to. "Palace Master Tan, you were injured. If it were us, for sure we would have lost our lives." "Yes, for sure, there is no doubt about it." Since someone had spoken, naturally, the others all expressed their stance and agreed with Tan Zhongqi. Tan Zhongqi did not interrupt when he saw everyone's atmosphere had become lively. He nodded when everyone had finished speaking and said, "Everyone, I did not mean to show off my power by saying these things. I only wanted to tell everyone that although the East seems vast and has many countries, it is not the truth. However, in the human countries, it does not hold a high position. A true powerhouse would come and cause trouble as they wished without any hesitation. Why is that?" Suddenly, Tan Zhongqi's voice rose. "Without a doubt, they dared to bully us because they saw that although the East is vast, it is a plate of loose sand. There is no cohesive force and no strong powerhouse as a guarantee. In the western part of the human countries there is the Sky Travel Empire. The entire northern area is covered by the Nine Raven Empire. The Red Dragon Empire controls the southwest and the south. Only the east does not have a strong alliance and a strong center. The foreign powerhouses can come and go as they please. They can do whatever they want. Inwardly, Qin Wushuang smiled. He knew that after beating around the bush for so long, his teacher had finally revealed the main point. The East lacked a strong center. Now, the most suitable candidate for this center had already appeared. Tan Zhongqi's words caused many people to nod in agreement. This time, it was not as simple as flattery. Many people were thinking deeply about Tan Zhongqi's analysis and felt that the situation was indeed as he had said. Only the East lacked a strong axis. These people were all smart. After analyzing up to this point, they understood the intention of the Stargaze Palace for this alliance meeting. It seemed that for this alliance meeting, the Stargaze Palace had planned everything thoroughly. Smart people knew what to do this time. Since the general trend had been set, if they opposed it, they would be going against the Stargaze Palace. It would only bring harm and no benefits. At this time, suddenly, old Devil Ji-in in the crowd saw Qin Wushuang looking at him with a faint smile. Inwardly, he trembled and instantly understood something. He cleared his throat and said, "Mr. Tan's words have really enlightened me. It seems that the East also needs a strong alliance, a strong center. Everyone, am I right?" Many people knew about the grudge between old Devil Ji-in and Tan Zhongqi. Now, when they saw old Devil Ji-in was openly agreeing with Tan Zhongqi's words, 8 out of 10 people were suspicious. They felt that this old Devil Ji-in had changed his personality. Qin Wushuang smiled lightly and nodded slightly to show that he was satisfied with old Devil Ji-in's words. When old Devil Ji-in received this hint, he became even more motivated. "Everyone, you all know that I once had some small conflicts with Palace Master Tan. During that time, I always felt wronged. I even had the thought of leaving the great Luo Empire to develop. However, I thought about it again. Leaving one's home is cheap. If I leave the great Luo Empire to develop and leave my own land, it would be like a fallen leaf leaving its root. What good result could there be? In the end, we are people of the great Luo Empire, people of the East. If we leave the East, we are nothing. Thus, a strong East is not only beneficial to the Ji-in sect, but to everyone. Thus, I have decided to let go of all previous grudges and fully support the Eastern Alliance. Everyone, let's work together and choose a strong leader to lead the East to glory." Instantly, Ji-in's words had won a wave of cheers. Even Tan Zhongqi did not expect that this old Devil Ji-in had such an understanding of the big picture. Qin Wushuang only smiled. Inwardly, he thought that if he used this old Devil Ji-in well, he would be a useful person. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 379. With old Devil Ji-in being the first one to step out to fan the flames and build up the atmosphere, many other powerhouses that wanted to curry favor with the Stargaze Palace also stepped out to encourage the alliance. In this way, many of the forces that were originally a little hesitant, seeing that the general trend had been set, could not be reserved even if they wanted to. They could only go with the flow, as if they had supported the alliance from the beginning, and began to advocate for the alliance. Initially, the Dragon and Tiger sect still held some hope that other powerhouses would step out to question the alliance. However, it seemed that before absolute power, any fantasy would be unrealistic. With a smile on his face, Tan Zhongqi looked at the Dragon and Tiger sect. Friends of the Dragon and Tiger sect, in the past, the Eastern powerhouses only looked at the Stargaze, the Dragon and Tiger sect, and the Archaic Mysteries sect. Now, the Archaic Mysteries sect has invited the wolf into the house and has been punished by the heavens. Now, to build the Eastern Alliance, your opinion is crucial. Head Shi, why don't you say something? In fact, Shi Chenglong was feeling depressed inwardly. However, they were already prepared for the worst. Hearing Tan Zhongqi's question, Shi Chenglong said, "To any of the Eastern countries, the Eastern Alliance is not a bad thing. Of course, the Dragon and Tiger sect agrees. Only, after this alliance we need to think carefully about how to establish the order, how to execute it, and how to distribute it." Tan Zhongqi glanced at Zhuo Buchuan and walked to the back. Zhuo Buchuan walked forward and laughed. Everyone, after the alliance, the Eastern countries should solve their internal matters. If the Eastern powerhouses were to have conflicts with the foreign powerhouses, of course, all the Eastern countries must unite and face the outside world. Otherwise, this alliance meeting will undoubtedly be useless. Hearing Zhuo Buchuan's words, all the other powerhouses were overjoyed. Initially, they were worried that the alliance would cause everyone to lose their autonomy. Now, it seemed that although the Stargaze Palace had the ambition to rule the East, they were not interested in interfering with the internal affairs of each country. As long as they did not interfere with each other, it would be a great thing for them to form an alliance and face the outside world. Zhuo Buchuan said, "Everyone, the Stargaze Palace has discussed this matter privately. The East has a vast territory and is close to the endless Eastern Sea. We also have a unique terrain. If we use it well, we can become the top existence in the human countries of the Tian Xian land. We do not seek to invade and oppress others. At least, we must ensure that no one bullies us." What Dragon Headshire said just now was very good. Order, execution, and distribution are all very serious topics. The intention of the Stargaze Palace is clear. Since we are all powerhouses of the Tian Xian land, we should follow the rules of the land. Everyone had a share, and the strong were respected. The Tian Xian land was all-inclusive, and did not completely forbid the existence of weak powerhouses. However, on the strong side of the law, certainly, there would be stronger existences. Therefore, the situation in the East is the same. Everyone has the right to live, but everything depends on strength. Speak with strength. These words were clear at a glance. Great Hall Master Zhuo is right. The more power you have, the more power you enjoy. If that's the case, then it's easy to establish order. Zhuo Buchuan nodded. Thus, I think that everyone should get a share of all the benefits in the East. However, as for how much could be distributed and how it should be distributed, everyone's strength would speak for themselves. It was the same for the exploration of the endless Eastern Sea. The stronger you are, the more talented you are, the more opportunities you will have. The right to explore the endless Eastern Sea? These forces were all stunned. In the past, the exploration rights of the endless Eastern Sea was a game for the three middle-ranking empires. It had nothing to do with the other powerhouses. However, Zhuo Buchuan's tone seemed to want to spread this exploration opportunity. Of course, this made everyone feel as if they had been injected with chicken blood as they became excited. They looked at Zhuo Buchuan seriously and wanted to hear his next words. Zhuo Buchuan said with a smile, "I believe that all the powerhouses here yearn for the exploration rights of the endless Eastern Sea. After much discussion, the Stargaze Palace feels that such opportunity should be opened to all the powerhouses in the East. Of course, whether you can get it, it would depend on your strength and luck. Headshire, what does the Dragon and Tiger sect think?" Inwardly, Shi Chenglong whispered. He knew that the Stargaze Palace was being generous because they wanted to buy people's hearts. Perhaps the next step would be to ask for the spiritual key from the Dragon and Tiger sect. "I am extremely impressed by your foresight, Head Palace Master Zhuo. Of course, I will not object. Of course, I will support you 100%. Zhuo Buchuan said with a smile. "Good. As for how to distribute the exploration rights and the spots, we will discuss it at length." As he spoke, suddenly, Zhuo Buchuan took out an object from his chest. Indeed, it was a jade sword. As soon as Shi Chenglong saw this sword, His heart sank. This was the spiritual key. Zhuobuchuan put that spiritual key forward. Everyone, the Stargaze Palace is willing to offer this spiritual key to open the entrance to the endless Eastern Sea. It is our first gift to the Eastern Alliance. Regardless of who will be the leader of the Eastern Alliance, our spiritual key will be in his hands. As soon as he said these words, Qin Wushuang also laughed inwardly. Naturally, the head palace master was pretending to be generous. Without a doubt, this spiritual key would belong to the Stargaze Palace in the end. Since the Stargaze Palace was hosting the Eastern Alliance, how could they let the seat of the leader fall to someone else? This move was to give the Dragon and Tiger sect a way out and let them offer the spiritual key. Suddenly, the old devil Ji-in laughed. Head Palace Master Zhua has such magnanimity. I wonder if the heads of the Dragon and Tiger sect will offer this spiritual key. Everyone will wait and see, haha. Inwardly, Shi Chenglong cursed the old devil Ji-in for being shameless. Inwardly, he only cried out bitterly. However, at this critical juncture, how could he refuse? Zhuobuchuan smiled calmly, and did not speak a word as he looked at Shi Chenglong. Shi Chenglong laughed dryly. Since head palace master Zhua is so righteous, how could the Dragon and Tiger sect be stingy with a spiritual key? Only, since the Archaic Mysteries sect was destroyed, their spiritual key is missing. With one less key, we cannot open the entrance to the endless Eastern Sea. This is a big problem. However, Zhuobuchuan laughed. Head Shi, leave this matter to the Stargaze Palace. Inwardly, Shi Chenglong was shocked. Hearing Zhuobuchuan's confident tone and everyone from the other powerhouses were watching his performance, he had to offer that spiritual key no matter how unwilling he was. When the other heads of the Dragon and Tiger sect saw Shi Chenglong put down the spiritual key, each of them revealed a solemn expression. They felt as if their flesh had been cut off. Only, under the general situation, if they did not hand it over, not only would they offend the public, they would also offend the Stargaze Palace. They would not know what kind of revenge they would receive in the future. With the Archaic Mysteries sect as an example, they would not dare to take the risk. Zhuobuchuan looked at the two spiritual keys with a smile. 2 of the 3 spiritual keys have been gathered. For the other one, the Stargaze Palace will find it. The day when the 3 spiritual keys are gathered will be the day when the endless Eastern Sea opens. And now there was only one most important topic left. Who would lead the Eastern Alliance? For this candidate, we need to gather the wisdom of the masses and recommend a powerhouse that everyone supports. As soon as he had finished speaking, someone shouted from below the stage, "Is there even a need to choose? Currently, in the East, there is no more suitable candidate than the Stargaze Palace. Yes, to defeat the 9 Palace and destroy the Archaic Mysteries sect, with such strength, there is no need to choose. No one will agree if we choose any other powerhouse. Support the Stargaze Palace. The Stargaze Palace will be the Alliance leader. The Stargaze Palace will lead the East to glory." Waves of voices rose and fell in succession. It was almost a one-sided call. At the scene, according to the division of powerhouses, only the Dragon and Tiger sect was qualified to compete for the position of the Alliance leader. However, under the current temperament of the Stargaze Palace, even a powerful sect like the Dragon and Tiger sect had to lower their heads. Currently, they did not have the qualifications or the courage. Facing these waves of calls, all the heads of the Dragon and Tiger sect felt extremely desolate. They knew that the balance of power between the 3 Eastern empires was gone forever. From now on, there would only be one powerhouse in the East. That would be the Stargaze Palace. No one would dare to disobey the orders of the Stargaze Palace. From now on, the Dragon and Tiger sect could only be a second-rate sect in the East. Old man Ji-in laughed strangely. Palace Master Zhua, everyone's eyes are clear. Currently, in the East, besides the Stargaze Palace, no other powerhouse is capable of leading the entire East. Indeed, the Stargaze Palace will not decline their responsibility. Head Palace Master Zhua, please don't decline to prevent everyone from being disappointed. Zhuobuchuan said with a smile. Everyone is wrong. We still need to vote for the position of the alliance leader. Old man Jiyin said, as if he was trying to please him. Vote for what? He stood up and shouted. Those who are against the Stargaze Palace becoming the alliance leader, step forward. For a time, there was complete silence as no one dared to move half a step. Old man Jiyin laughed strangely. Head Palace Master Zhua, did you see that? Everyone has passed. Zhuobuchuan shook his head and said, This is child's play. Old man Jiyin scratched his head and rolled his eyes as he said, Okay, those who support the Stargaze Palace becoming the alliance leader, please raise your hand. Let Head Palace Master Zhua see everyone's passion. With that, swish, 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 everyone raised their hands in unison. Only the Dragon and Tiger sect was still somewhat hesitant. Zhuobuchuan looked at the Dragon and Tiger sect unintentionally. Tan Zhongqi also seemed to unintentionally take 2 steps forward and stood next to Zhuobuchuan. Inwardly, all the leaders of the Dragon and Tiger sect could only obey despite their unwillingness. Shi Chenglong took a step forward and cupped his hands in a salute. Head Palace Master Zhua, everyone in the Stargaze Palace is in agreement. Of course, us old friends will support you unconditionally. There's no need to raise our hands to support these clichés, haha. His last laugh sounded like a laugh. However, inwardly, he felt more miserable than crying. Zhuobuchuan gave a long sigh. I feel somewhat ashamed that Head Shi is so generous. Old man Jiyin laughed strangely. Head Palace Master Zhua, it's another unanimous vote. I think the Stargaze Palace should not decline. Everyone hopes to have a powerful alliance leader to protect the East and make the East even more prosperous. Of course, under the leadership of the new alliance leader, everyone can gain more benefits than before. That would be even better. All the other palace masters of the Stargaze Palace nodded and said to Zhuobuchuan, Head Palace Master, it's rare for everyone to show such sincerity. I think the Stargaze Palace should face the difficulties and take on this heavy responsibility. Zhuobuchuan gave a long sigh and nodded. Okay, if the Stargaze Palace continues to decline, it would not be straightforward enough. Since everyone supports the Stargaze Palace will not disappoint everyone. All hail the Alliance leader, all hail the Stargaze Palace. For a time, congratulatory words rolled in endlessly. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com to read more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 380. With the election of the Eastern Alliance leader, the climax of the entire Alliance meeting had arrived. Under the leadership of the Alliance leader, all the powerhouses made a blood oath and set up an agreement. After the agreement was made, the Stargaze Palace hosted a grand banquet to welcome the guests from all over the world. Instantly, the atmosphere became lively. After a few months of preparation, the entire Stargaze Palace was satisfied with the result of this Eastern Alliance meeting. Not only did they become the Eastern Alliance leader, they had also left a deeper mark on the Stargaze Palace. Indeed, this step had established a solid foundation for the Great Luo to ascend to the upper-ranking empire. Now, the Stargaze Palace had completed the Eastern Alliance meeting. Next, they would need to use the name of the royal family to proceed with their ascension. Everything seemed to have flowed naturally. The Great Luo started to make the final preparations. In the human countries, the upper-ranking empire was the highest existence. Thus, the so-called ascension was nothing more than a self-designation. Of course, this self-designation carried a lot of knowledge. It was not something that one could do as they wished. At least, to gain the position of an upper-ranking empire, they must gain the recognition of the other 3 upper-ranking empires. Once they had gained the recognition, they could start this self-designation ceremony. Or else, it would be a form of overstepping their authority, and would attract the hostility of the other upper-ranking empires. They might even join hands to attack them. Thus, it was necessary to test the reaction of the three upper-ranking empires. Among the three upper-ranking empires, the Red Dragon Empire had just become enemies. Naturally, they did not need to care about their attitude. Their focus was the Sky Travel Empire and the Nine Raven Empire. The Great Luo had sent out envoys to visit these two upper-ranking empires. On one hand, they were making the final preparations to ascend to the upper-ranking empire. Since Qin Wushuang had a rare moment of free time, he was training with Bao Bao and the Purple Flame Electric Beast. Currently, Qin Wushuang held a prominent position in the Stargaze Palace. Thus, he was able to enter any training place in the Stargaze Palace. On this day, Bao Bao and the Purple Flame Electric Beast were having a good time sparring. Suddenly, Bao Bao felt something and stopped. Senior Lone, stop for a moment. Stunned, the Purple Flame Electric Beast cried out, Bao Bao, just fight if you want to, why are you stopping? Bao Bao sat on the ground. The qi inside my body is rolling, it seems that I am about to break through. The Purple Flame Electric Beast screamed strangely, impossible! Bao Bao, didn't you say that you just entered the perfect stage not long ago? How did you break through? Bao Bao chuckled. This is the benefit of having the bloodline of the divine monkey. Qin Wushuang moved closer. Bao Bao, are you truly showing signs of a breakthrough? Bao Bao nodded seriously. Boss Wushuang, yes, isn't it too fast? Initially, Qin Wushuang felt that he had already increased his strength quickly. However, in less than half a year, this Bao Bao was about to break through again. And this breakthrough was not an ordinary one. Instead, he had entered a brand new realm, the Void Martial Stage. The Purple Flame Electric Beast swore, Darn it, Bao Bao, before I was sealed, I was at the peak of the perfect stage. Now I have not sensed any signs of a breakthrough. If you break through, where will I put my face? Bao Bao said proudly, Senior Lone, are you jealous of me? The Purple Flame Electric Beast said angrily, Jealous my ass! I will also train in isolation and aim to break through as soon as possible. I cannot let you, little Bao Bao, leave me behind. Qin Wushuang knew that both the Purple Flame Electric Beast and Bao Bao were rare genius spiritual beasts. Bao Bao possessed the bloodline of the ancient spiritual monkey and had acquired that 10,000-year holy object, the Holy Ivory Flower. Since the Holy Ivory Flower had awakened the bloodline of the ancient spiritual monkey, it would be a piece of cake for him to break through in the spiritual martial force. If Bao Bao was only at the initial stage, it would be possible for him to jump to the perfect stage. It would not be a problem for him to break through levels, not to mention it was only one level. Boss Wushuang, then I will have to trouble you to protect us. Bao Bao made a face. Qin Wushuang laughed. Okay, this is a small matter. No accidents will happen in the territory of the Stargaze Palace. However, I still decided to protect you guys. Bao Bao said to the Purple Flame Electric Beast with a smile. Senior Lone, how long are you going to train in isolation? The Purple Flame Electric Beast cried out. 10 days? No, 1 month, no, 3 to 5 months. Ha, it's none of your business. Bao Bao laughed. Senior Lone, how is this isolation training? You are clearly acting out of spite. I only need 1 month, at most 1 month, and half a month at the fastest. How about we have a competition? The Purple Flame Electric Beast said angrily. Let's do it. Okay, Senior Lone, how about a month? If after a month you have not broken through, and I have, you will serve me for 3 years for free. You will massage my back and shoulders, and no excuses. How about it? The Purple Flame Electric Beast laughed strangely. If you are not afraid that I will crush your little body, let's make a bet. However, Qin Wushuang said, You two buffoons, don't play tricks. Go and train in isolation. Don't force yourself for a month. After a month, I think the great Luo Empire will have some progress in becoming an upper-ranking empire. If one of you guys can break through to the Void Martial Force, it will be an unexpected surprise. Bao Bao laughed. Boss Wushuang, just watch. Qin Wushuang said, Go! Finally, these two buffoons did not play tricks and went to train in isolation after finding a place. Since Qin Wushuang was alone, he did not stay idle on the outside. Ever since he had absorbed Zhao Heng and Dao Haitong's spiritual qi, his dantian had been extremely active. Although he had not reached the edge of breaking through to the perfect stage, he had already shown some signs. As long as he kept training at this speed, a breakthrough would happen sooner or later. Now, Bao Bao and Lone are both advancing by leaps and bounds. I cannot fall too far behind. Qin Wushuang thought inwardly, it seems that I must work harder. With the whip from Bao Bao and the purple flame electric beast, Qin Wushuang did not dare to neglect his training. He knew that he had an advantage in training. That was, his powerful body. Regardless of how he absorbed the spiritual qi, he would not need to worry about the spiritual qi attacking his body. He knew that everything had benefited from those two spiritual light baptisms from the 7 deadly formation arrays. Ever since Qin Wushuang had entered the third circle, he had become even more curious about this 7 deadly formation arrays. The fourth circle of the 7 deadly formation arrays was at the Xian Yuan Mound. In the end, who is the owner of that 7 deadly formation arrays? What kind of secrets are hidden behind this 7 deadly formation arrays? Qin Wushuang could not help but feel more expectant. On that day, Miss Mu Rong had said that there is also a Qin in the Xian Yuan Mound. In the end, are the ancestors of the Eastwood Qin related to that Qin in the Xian Yuan Mound? Qin Wushuang was also looking forward to it. He still remembered that secret ancestral instruction his father had told him. It said that inside the ancestral house of the Qin, there was a mechanism. This mechanism could only be activated by a perfect stage warrior. The perfect stage was already the strongest existence in the human countries, and this strongest existence had only just acquired the qualification to activate that mechanism. It was apparent that if the Qin truly had a headquarters, it would be related to that Xian Yuan Mound headquarters. Even if they were not related, for sure, the headquarters of the Qin would be an exceptional existence. Only, according to the ancestral instruction his father had told him, the headquarters of the Qin should have encountered some kind of crisis. Or else, how could they have recruited strong men from the secular powerhouses? Although there were thousands and thousands of clues, Qin Wushuang no longer thought about it. His priority was to increase his strength to the perfect stage. Then, he would go to the ancestral house of the Qin to see what kind of mysteries were contained in that ancestral mechanism. Perfect stage. Qin Wushuang's goal was unprecedentedly clear. A trace of wild lights flashed in his eyes. That guy Zhuo Tianxi has returned to the Xian Yuan Mound to further his studies. Sooner or later, he will advance to the void martial stage. The heavenly Luo Daoist sect will not get involved. However, they can increase Zhuo Tianxi's strength and bestow him with some powerful weapons. By that time, this Zhuo Tianxi will be a great threat. Since I have already started, I must go all the way. This Zhuo Tianxi must be eliminated by the roots. Qin Wushuang became bold as he thought. Only, I must be careful when making this move. I must let him die without knowing the reason and not let the heavenly Luo Daoist sect find any clues. Currently, Zhuo Tianxi was inside one of the courtyards of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Currently, his entire body was brimming with a wave of joy. His eyes were filled with excitement and joy. It seemed that he had walked out from the haze of defeat at the hands of the 9 Palace faction. Stargaze Palace, Zhuo Buchuan, Tan Zhongqi, and those 2 bastards, just you wait. The day I leave the Xian Yuan Mound will be the day I make a comeback. Humph, becoming an upper-ranking empire? I will let you guys go to the underworld in this beautiful dream. Zhuo kept harboring evil thoughts. While he was thinking, the door of one of the courtyards opened and an elder with white hair and beard walked out. He waved at Zhuo Tianxi. "Tianxi, come here." Zhuo Tianxi walked over in high spirits. "Uncle, how did it go?" That elder said, "Count yourself lucky, the 6th Shakyamuni already agreed to give you a sealed void martial stage spiritual beast. Tianxi, if this time you still fail to live up to expectations, even as your uncle, I can't help you." Zhuo Tianxi immediately expressed his stance. "Uncle, this time, I have a sealed void martial stage spiritual beast. Plus, I have already entered the void martial stage. If I cannot destroy the Stargaze Palace, not to mention you, I cannot forgive myself." That elder was Zhuo Tianxi's uncle and an elder with a good position in the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. And in the sect, the elders were second only to the Shakyamuni and the Tao warriors. In the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, there were 4 Tao warriors, 9 Shakyamuni and 40 or 50 elders. Thus, although Zhuo Tianxi's uncle, Luo Yang, was an elder, he could not do whatever he wanted in the sect. This time, for Zhuo Tianxi, he had already given up his face, and the heavenly Luo Taoist sect had almost violated the 10,000-year ancient agreement because of the matter with the 9 Palace faction. Once the enemies of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect made an issue out of this matter, it would be detrimental to the future of the sect in the Xian Yuan Mound. Thus, the heavenly Luo Taoist sect would not step out for the 9 Palace faction. To help Zhuo Tianxi to this extent, Luo Yang, as his uncle, had already done all he could. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 381. 10 days later, before the mountain gate of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, Zhuo Tianxi was prepared to bid farewell to the sect and embark on his journey home. Currently, after going through the special baptism of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, he had already broken through the obstacle from the perfect stage to the void martial stage. Not only that, he had also acquired a sealed void martial stage spiritual beast. Just like the one Luo Yun used in the past, it was sealed inside the beast talisman and could be summoned to battle through a secret technique. Its power was not to be underestimated. "Uncle, you can go back. I'll go back to the human countries. This time, I will not disappoint you and will not bring shame to the heavenly Luo Taoist sect." Luo Yang raised his white eyebrow and said coldly, "I hope you will not go back on your words this time. If you still lose this time, you don't need to come to the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. In the future, don't call me uncle." Zhuo Tianxi said confidently, "Uncle, I won't make any mistakes this time. Go, reorganize the sect and nurture more young disciples. If you can send 1 or 2 exceptional talents to the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, it would be your greatest contribution." Zhuo Tianxi made a solemn vow. "Uncle, don't worry. Tianxi will do his best. Let's go." Luo Yang waved his hand and was about to walk in. Suddenly, 2 figures appeared from the side. Both of them had young faces, and one of them was Luo Yun. The other one was even younger. His face was like jade, and his eyebrows were like bright stars. He was extremely handsome and confident. Luo Yun was arrogant and haughty in the human countries, but in front of this young man, he was submissive. He wanted nothing more than to think of ways to curry favor with this young man. "Zhuo Tianxi, take care," Luo Yun shouted. When Luo Yang saw Luo Yun, he did not even move his eyebrows. This Luo Yun was Luo Yang's nephew, and was not an outstanding figure at the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. Therefore, Luo Yang did not show any joy when he saw Luo Yun. However, when he caught a glimpse of the young man behind Luo Yun, Luo Yang's expression changed. Young Master Luo Ting? Luo Yang sucked in a breath of cold air. Luo Ting. He was one of the top 3 figures among the young generation of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Although he was young, many of the middle generation and young generation disciples could not compare to him. It was not an exaggeration to say that this Luo Ting would most likely become the leader of the next generation of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. He might even become the next Dao warrior. Elder Luo Yang. Luo Ting slowly walked up and greeted Luo Yang. Currently, although he held a high position in the sect, he was still a disciple. Before the elders of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, it was inappropriate for him to act presumptuously. And this Luo Ting also appeared to be refined and courteous, with a good upbringing. Young Master Luo Ting, what brings you to this old man's humble abode today? Luo Yang laughed. Luo Yun hurriedly said, Uncle, this young Master Luo Ting is here to ask about a matter. Luo Yang nodded. What does young Master Luo Ting have to ask? Luo Yun hurriedly said, Young Master Luo Ting wants to ask Zhuo Tianxi about someone. Actually, I have already told young Master Luo Ting about this person. However, to be on the safe side, young Master Luo Ting wants Zhuo Tianxi to recognize this person as well, in case he gets the wrong person. Zhuo Tianxi knew that Luo Ting was an important figure in the training hall and hurriedly said, Please ask young Master Luo Ting. Luo Ting nodded his head lightly. I heard from Luo Yun that when he was handling some matters in the human countries, he was stopped by a mysterious woman. Is that right? Zhuo Tianxi did not stop as he nodded. Yes, that woman is exceptional. She spoke with assurance and seemed to be very arrogant. Luo Ting frowned slightly. When Luo Yang saw the situation, he immediately shouted, Tianxi, you should answer the question properly, don't make random comments. Shocked inwardly, Zhuo Tianxi immediately nodded. Yes. Luo Ting said, That woman was very young and had a maid next to her, right? That's right, that woman was dressed in light yellow clothing and had a beautiful appearance. Indeed, she had a maid with her. That maid seemed to be even younger and only appeared to be 14 or 15 years old. With a profound gaze, Luo Ting slowly took out a scroll. He shook his hand, and it was a piece of fine brushwork painting. Inside the painting, there was the appearance of a woman. This woman had an exquisite body and a stunning appearance. She looked exactly the same as the woman he had seen at the Stargaze Palace. It was as if that woman had walked out from this painting. That's her. Zhuo Tianxi blurted out. Finally, Luo Yun let out a long sigh of relief and said, Young Master Luo Ting, I did not remember wrongly. Now, Zhuo Tianxi has also confirmed that the woman we saw is the one in this painting. Instantly, Luo Ting's expression became much more solemn. Hearing Luo Yun's endless chatter, suddenly, he laughed. Luo Yun, this time, it's all thanks to you. Luo Ting would never forget this kindness. In the future, if anyone of the younger generation bullies you, just tell them my name. Luo Yun was overjoyed. Thank you, young Master Luo Ting. Luo Ting waved his hand. Elder Luo Yang, sorry for the inconvenience. After he had finished speaking, he cupped his hands in a salute to Luo Yang and left. To Zhuo Tianxi, a person of the human countries, he did not even show any extra courtesy. Although Zhuo Tianxi felt it was unfair, he had been questioned by him. After all, he owed him half a favor. How come he did not even greet him? However, inwardly, he only thought about it for a moment and suppressed it. He knew that in the heavenly Luo Daoist sect, a person that even his uncle did not dare to let down his guard was definitely an existence that they could not afford to offend. Tianxi, why are you still standing there? Luo Yang shouted when he saw Zhuo Tianxi still standing in the same place. Zhuo Tianxi realized the light and turned to leave. However, Luo Yun was curious. Uncle, could that girl in the painting be young Master Luo Ting's fiancée, the Missy of the Mu Rong clan? Luo Yang glared at him. Don't ask what you should not ask. Luo Yun retreated and did not dare to let out a fart. Half a month later, at the entrance of the Nine-Raven Temple at the Nine-Raven Abyss, a special envoy from the Nine-Raven Empire had come to seek an audience with the divine chiefs of the Nine-Raven Temple. This special envoy was not an ordinary figure. He was the Crown Prince of the Nine-Raven Empire. After a moment, a butler walked out. "Crown Prince, please come in." The Nine-Raven Crown Prince did not dare to neglect as he walked inside carefully. At this moment, the 5 major divine chiefs of the Nine-Raven Temple were all sitting inside the main hall. "It's an honor to meet with the divine chiefs. Haha, Crown Prince, you may rise." One of the divine chiefs of the Nine-Raven Temple said, "Please take a seat." The Crown Prince sat down carefully and said, "Divine chiefs, the special envoy from the great Luo Empire has arrived and sent an invitation to the Nine-Raven imperial family to send a representative to participate in their upper-rank empire's self-naming ceremony. My father does not dare to make a decision on this matter, so he ordered me to ask for your opinion." The great Luo Empire. The head divine chief was a skinny old man. He had a worried expression and his clothes were tied up. At first glance, he looked like an ascetic cultivator and did not look like the leader of the Nine-Raven Temple. "Second brother, third brother, when you go to the great Luo Empire this time, do you think the great Luo Empire has the qualifications to be promoted to an upper-rank empire?" The second divine chief was a middle-aged man in a white robe with an elegant temperament. Hearing the head divine chief's question, he quickly said, "Head divine chief, the two of us have observed for a while. The great Luo Empire is located in the east and is considered rich. However, to become an upper-rank empire, their foundation seems to be lacking. What about their strength?" The head divine chief asked directly. "Strength?" The second divine chief gave a light sigh. "To be able to make the Nine Palace suffer, the strength of that Stargaze Palace is extraordinary. I heard that they have 4 elite warriors at the perfect stage. They also have a tyrannical bow." The third divine chief added. The head divine chief gave a long sigh. "This Stargaze Palace has kept their composure. That Zhuotianxi has always had a big appetite. This time, he has suffered a great loss. After this setback, the Nine Palace will not be able to recover. Only, Zhuotianxi is not an ordinary person. He does have some connections in the Xian Yuan Mound. Thus, this matter is not over. The Nine-Raven Temple does not need to express our attitude. Of course, the Nine Palace will step out." "You mean that Zhuotianxi is still not giving up?" "If he gives up, he would not be called Zhuotianxi. If the Stargaze Palace wants to dominate the East, Zhuotianxi will step out. Our attitude will be neutral. If the Nine Palace wins, we will support them. If the Stargaze Palace wins, we will help the great Luo become an upper-rank empire. The situation in the East will not affect the Nine-Raven Temple. There is no need for us to step out." The meaning of the head divine chief was clear. That Crown Prince also understood and kept nodding. "I think the Sky Travel Empire has the same opinion as us. Now, with the Nine Palace stepping out, why should we be the bad guys and make enemies out of nothing?" The second divine chief laughed leisurely. The Crown Prince realized the light. "You mean that since they have invited us, we will go. There is no need to express our attitude, and let the Nine Palace and the Red Dragon Empire do whatever they want." "That's right, that's what I meant." While they were talking, a butler walked in with a letter in his hand. "Divinity Chiefs, an invitation from the Nine Palace." "Nine Palace?" All 5 divinity chiefs showed a surprised expression. Then, that head divine chief laughed leisurely. "This is Zhuotianxi starting to stir up trouble." They opened the letter and indeed, it was a letter written by Zhuotianxi himself. He invited them to go to the great Luo Empire in the East. In the letter, he scolded the great Luo Empire and stated that they must not let the Stargaze Palace achieve their ambitions and set a bad precedent. For such an offensive action, the three upper-rank empires should join forces to suppress it. The head divinity chief laughed. Look, Zhuotianxi can no longer sit still. After they had read the letter, those divinity chiefs all laughed. Head divinity chief, I think we should all go and watch the show. Firstly, we will see how this matter will end, and secondly, we will see how much power the Stargaze Palace has. A light flashed across the head divinity chief's eyes as he nodded. Okay, let's go take a look. Almost at the same time, the Emperor Buddha Palace of the Sky Travel Empire also received a letter from Zhuotianxi. The content of the letter was the same. It also scolded the actions of the Stargaze Palace and threatened that the three powerhouses would join forces to suppress the Stargaze Palace. Of course, the Emperor Buddha Palace did not have a good impression of the Nine Palace. Although they had received Zhuotianxi's letter, they still had doubts about joining forces to suppress the Stargaze Palace. Thus, they decided to act according to the circumstances. To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 382. One after another, the emissaries returned to the Great Luo. The news they brought back was rather exciting. Regardless of the Nine Raven Empire or the Sky Travel Empire, they had all agreed to send people to participate in the ceremony. The auspicious day to upgrade to an upper-ranking empire was set on the 10th of October. Regardless of the royal family of the Great Luo or the Stargaze Palace, they were all extremely busy before the 10th of October. They were making all the detailed arrangements for this ceremony. This upgrade to an upper-ranking empire was a crucial step for the Great Luo to reach the peak. During the process, they must be on guard against all possible accident. From the 5 palace masters to the ordinary disciples, each of them carried out their duties. Although they were busy, everything was in order. Inside the Virtuous Cloud Summit, Qin Wushuang's 1 month of protection had also reached the final crucial moment. Currently, Qin Wushuang was also looking forward to it. He wondered if Bao Bao could truly break through the restraints of the perfect stage and enter the void martial stage. If he could enter the void martial stage, it would definitely be exciting news. In this month, Qin Wushuang had also consolidated his dantian to an optimal state. As long as he kept absorbing the natural spiritual qi, it would not be difficult for him to break through to the perfect stage even if he did not rely on external spiritual qi. Only, he still needed an opportunity for everything. At this moment, suddenly, a surge of golden light shot out from deep inside the Virtuous Cloud Summit. As soon as this golden light shot out, instantly, the entire Virtuous Cloud Summit seemed to shake. With this shake, it was as if the heavens and the earth were shaking. The mountain rocks rolled and the vegetation was destroyed. Boom! Boom! The continuous violent sound caused the shaking of the entire Virtuous Cloud Summit to become even more intense. Qin Wushuang stood up and revealed an urgent expression. When he saw this scene of golden light shooting to the sky, he was not surprised, but happy. It was because it was not the first time he had seen this scene of golden light. Initially at the Monkey King Mountain, he had seen it once. He knew that everything was related to Bao Bao. Could it be Bao Bao has successfully broken through the restraints of the perfect stage? Has he entered the void martial stage? Qin Wushuang thought to himself as he stared fixedly at the sky above the Lingyun Peak. A series of curses came from his back. The purple flame electric beast came out from his hiding place and yelled, "Did I see a ghost?" His closed-door cultivation had caused such a huge commotion. "Boss, what's going on?" As soon as the purple flame electric beast finished his question, he also saw the soaring golden light. He opened his mouth wide and couldn't say anything. With a gulp sound, he swallowed a mouthful of saliva and said while stuttering, "Such powerful power! Boss, this is the power of the void martial stage." The power of the void martial stage? Qin Wushuang was overjoyed. This way, Bao Bao has truly broken through? The purple flame electric beast sighed helplessly and cursed. Such a pervert, damn it. To be left in the dust by a monkey that's not even 10 years old. Boss, fate is unfair. Qin Wushuang smiled faintly. GMO, don't lament about the unfairness of fate. Compared to other spirit beasts, you're already very lucky. Many spirit beasts could not even reach the perfect stage in their lifetime. The purple flame electric beast said with frustration. But boss, you don't know how many spirit beasts have broken through to the perfect stage. Qin Wushuang encouraged him. GMO, I believe you will not be too far away from that day. I believe in your potential. The purple flame electric beast laughed mischievously. Of course, for sure I will have such a day. Besides, this day will not be too far away, I promise. At this moment, that golden light in the sky suddenly spread out. Rolling in the sky, it changed its direction and dropped down at a rapid speed. That speed was as fast as a shooting star. The golden light rushed over. Only when it was right in front of them could they see clearly that there was a furry great divine ape inside the golden light. It was currently changing its form at a high speed. The purple flame electric beast was shocked. Boss, Bao Bao is refining his shape. This is the void martial stage. What kind of appearance is this monkey going to make? Qin Wushuang laughed. Don't be hasty, the answer will come soon. The purple flame electric beast laughed strangely. I am not hasty. When I think about how Bao Bao is going to climb on top of my head and ride rushshod over me, I feel extremely annoyed. I don't care what kind of appearance he will make. At this moment, suddenly, that golden light dashed towards Qin Wushuang and the others. The closer it got, the fainter that golden light became. As the golden light continued to retreat, Bao Bao's figure gradually appeared before Qin Wushuang and the others. Boss Wushuang, Senior Lone. A crisp voice emerged from the golden light. As soon as the golden light withdrew, a lively young man jumped out. This young man had delicate features and was skinny. Spiritual chi flashed between his brows and eyes. His eyes were extremely clear and did not have the slightest presence of the mortal world. Bao Bao? The purple flame electric beast opened his eyes widely and looked at this young man. The young man chuckled. Brother Lone, what do you think of my appearance? The purple flame electric beast shook his head. Not good. That young man said gloomily. Really? The purple flame electric beast laughed. How could I lie to you? Your appearance is too old. Also, you are as skinny as firewood and appear to be malnourished. You don't have the slightest spirit. You are not as powerful as your true form of the spiritual ape. After he had finished, he did not forget to say to Qin Wushuang, Boss, am I right? The young man Bao Bao had made turn to look at Qin Wushuang with eager eyes. Boss, is it true that I am such a failure as Senior Lone said? Qin Wushuang laughed. Bao Bao, I think your appearance is good. Just by looking at it, you can confuse many people. Who would know that behind this appearance, there is a super spiritual beast at the void martial stage. Furthermore, your appearance is considered to be very likable among humans. Nice. Finally, Bao Bao's worry turned into joy. Of course, Boss Wushuang is right. For sure, Senior Lone is jealous of me and is deliberately making me angry. The purple flame electric beast laughed. I would not be jealous of a little kid like you. If I were to refine my appearance, I would definitely refine a giant guy with a curly beard. He would have a mighty appearance and an imposing manner. As soon as he walked out, people would be scared of you. Only that would be worthy of my brave image. Bao Bao laughed. Then when you break into the void martial stage, I will see what kind of ugly appearance you will refine. The purple flame electric beast felt good about himself. Just wait and see. By that time, I will make you guys gasp in amazement. Qin Wushuang waved his hand and stopped the endless bickering between these two. He laughed. Bao Bao, did the process of breaking into the void martial stage go smoothly? Bao Bao said seriously. Boss Wushuang, this process was extremely smooth. I almost did not encounter any bottlenecks or obstacles. You could say it was done in one go. The purple flame electric beast mumbled. You must be bragging. It's impossible for there not to be any obstacles. Qin Wushuang gave a long sigh. If someone else had said this, perhaps it would be bragging. However, Bao Bao has the bloodline of the ancient spiritual monkey and has swallowed a 10,000-year holy object like the holy ivory flower. It should be a piece of cake for him to enter the void martial stage. The supreme Dao stage should be Bao Bao's goal. Bao Bao laughed mischievously. Boss, words are so nice. Senior Lone, why can't you be like Boss and admire me from the bottom of your heart? The purple flame electric beast gave a long sigh. I, Senior Lone, never admire people. However, since you have the bloodline of the ancient spiritual monkey, I will admire you a little. Qin Wushuang laughed and asked, Lone, how did your solitary training go? The purple flame electric beast said, Just when I was enjoying myself, the entire mountain shook and startled me. I did not gain much from this solitary training. However, I already felt the presence of a breakthrough. With a suitable opportunity, I can also enter the void martial stage. Bao Bao, wait for me, I will catch up to you. Bao Bao chuckled. I will wait to see Senior Lone turn into a giant guy with a curly beard. Qin Wushuang laughed. All right, it's only half a month until the 10th of October. We have stayed at this virtuous cloud summit for a month or two. Let's go down the mountain early and see if there's anything we can help with. The two beasts nodded. All right, it's good to go down and play. It's also depressing to stay in this mountain for too long. I only hope that this crowning ceremony will go smoothly and there will be no more twists and turns. Qin Wushuang gave a light sigh. Bao Bao did not agree as he chuckled. If everything goes smoothly and peaceful, then it's meaningless. Senior Lone, don't you think so? Isn't that right? If everything is peaceful, we will become decorations. It's boring, it's better if people cause trouble. The more people that cause trouble, the more chances we will have to perform. Then, I can make a name for myself. The purple flame electric beast agreed. Qin Wushuang could not stop smiling bitterly. From your tone, it seems that you are not afraid of trouble, but are afraid that there is not enough trouble? Yes, boss, if there is no trouble, then the atmosphere will not be enhanced. To become an upper-ranking empire, the great Luo needs to borrow some external power to establish your prestige. This way, it will be more persuasive and leave a deeper impression on people. Bao Bao is right, and I think that Zhuo Tianxi of the Nine Palace faction is not a kind person. He would not swallow his anger and watch the great Luo surpass them to become an upper-ranking empire. I think he will come to cause trouble. And this time, perhaps, his strength will increase substantially. Qin Wushuang became impatient from their words. If Zhuo Tianxi increases his strength, he will be an elite warrior at the void martial stage. He will have the same strength as that elite warrior of the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. If that's the case, he will not be easy to deal with. However, Bao Bao appeared to be fascinated as he said leisurely, If that's the case, it would be the best. I can use Zhuo Tianxi to test my void martial stage. Boss, where can I find such a good thing? The purple flame electric beast also laughed recklessly. Even if Zhuo Tianxi had advanced, he would not be stronger than that guy from the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Thus, you don't need to worry. Unless he can also summon a sealed void martial stage beast, or else, even if Bao Bao did not break through, we can play with him. At this moment, Qin Wushuang suddenly stopped at the location of the Stargaze Palace at the foot of the mountain. He saw 7 bursts of flames shooting up to the sky and burning in all directions. Let's go down the mountain. This is the order the Stargaze Palace uses to gather all disciples. Qin Wushuang called out and whispered, "Could something have happened?" To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 383. There was only one purpose for the Stargaze Palace to gather all disciples. Before the arrival of October 10th, they must prepare all defensive measures to avoid any accident. Earlier, when Bao Bao had sent out that wave of golden light at the Virtuous Cloud Summit, it had clearly caused the higher-ups of the Stargaze Palace to feel somewhat confused. However, Qin Wushuang did not say that Bao Bao had advanced to the Void Martial stage. Instead, he said that Bao Bao and the Purple Flame Electric Beast had caused a great commotion when they sparred. Wushuang, the 10th of October is approaching. During this time, the guests from the imperial capital will be extremely complicated. Still the old rules, you young disciples must go to the imperial capital to maintain order. Keep an eye out in secret to prevent any traitors from infiltrating and causing trouble. Zhuobuchuan, the head palace master, instructed. Qin Wushuang nodded and replied, "I also have the same intention." After all, the Eastern Alliance meeting was only a matter within the Eastern region. Even if the foreign powerhouses wanted to interfere, they would not have a proper reason. However, this time is different. I don't know the intentions of those upper-ranking empire. Wushuang, how do you think the upper-ranking empire will react? Tan Zhongqi asked with a chuckle. From his tone, it seemed that he was inspecting him. Qin Wushuang thought for a moment and said, "Teacher, I think the most important thing right now is to guard against the counterattack from the Nine Palace faction. At this time, the Nine Raven Temple and the Emperor Buddha Palace should not go against the Stargaze Palace publicly. It's because the strength of the Stargaze Palace would not affect them much. The strength of the Eastern region would not pose much of a threat to their foundation." Both Zhuobuchuan and Tan Zhongqi nodded with a smile and motioned Qin Wushuang to continue. Qin Wushuang said again, "That guy from the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect left behind those words before he left. I am worried that the Heavenly Luo Taoist sect will use some special methods to help Zhuotianxi enter the Void Martial stage. This way, for sure, Zhuotianxi will make a comeback. If Zhuotianxi can suppress the Stargaze Palace, the attitude of the Nine Raven Temple and the Emperor Buddha Palace will not be beneficial to us. And if we suppress the Nine Palace faction again, I believe that the attitude of those two major powerhouses will be beneficial to us." Fence-sitter. Tan Zhongqi laughed. "Master is right. He's a fence-sitter. Don't be in a hurry to declare your stance. Wait until the results are out, then make their stance clear. Don't offend anyone first." Zhuobuchuan felt deeply gratified. "Wushuang, your analysis is good. In these days, the palace masters have also been trying to figure out these problems. Our thoughts are similar to yours. Therefore, in the end, it's still the same four words, the winner takes all." Qin Wushuang nodded solemnly, "That's right. Temple Masters, this disciple will go to the imperial capital to meet up with my senior brothers. Go, Wushuang, perhaps this will be the most crucial battle in the history of the Stargaze Palace. Perhaps this battle will have no smoke, no battles, or perhaps it will be a battle where blood will flow like rivers. Regardless, if we don't take advantage of the situation, we will not have such a good opportunity in the future." Zhuobuchuan gave a long sigh. "That's right, Wushuang, we can't miss this opportunity. Regardless of success or failure, this time, we can only seize the opportunity and fight for it. Success, the great Luo Empire would become an upper-ranking empire, and the Stargaze Palace would become a first-rate powerhouse in the human countries. From this point on, we will control the Eastern situation and develop vigorously." Tan Zhongqi patted Qin Wushuang's shoulder and encouraged him. Wushuang, up to this point, your position in the Stargaze Palace has already surpassed the significance of the younger generation. We, the Hall Masters, have already viewed you as an existence on equal footing with us. Therefore, in the future, you can no longer act according to the temperament of a young disciple. The other palace masters all nodded to show their agreement with Tan Zhongqi's words. In fact, Qin Wushuang also knew clearly that after Zhao Heng's invasion, he had used the graceful spiritual bow and it had greatly increased his position in the Stargaze Palace. And the battle where he had defeated the 9 Palace faction had established his supreme position in the Stargaze Palace. Without a doubt, he had surpassed the scope of a young disciple. With his current position, not to mention the young disciples, besides Zhuo Buchuan and Tan Zhongqi, even the other higher-ups would pale in comparison. Fortunately, Qin Wushuang had always kept a low profile and never thought of himself as a hero. He still maintained a humble attitude and treated people with the identity of a young disciple. Because of this, Qin Wushuang had conquered all the higher-ups in the Stargaze Palace. All of them felt that at such a young age, Qin Wushuang was indeed someone who would achieve great things since he was able to do so with ease. Thus, inwardly, the 5 palace masters had already accepted Qin Wushuang as someone on the same level as them. Now, when Tan Zhongqi had exposed this matter, the other palace masters did not object. Now, they would not consider the competition between the palaces. Qin Wushuang's strength and contributions were already displayed clearly. Even if they went against their conscience, they could not erase him. Not to mention the higher-ups in the Stargaze Palace would not go against their conscience. After Qin Wushuang had bowed, he left the Stargaze Palace and headed towards the imperial capital. When Zhuo Buchuan, the head palace master, saw Qin Wushuang leaving, he gave a long sigh. Indeed, Wushuang is the deputy general of the Stargaze Palace. Ever since he had entered the sect, the Stargaze Palace has been climbing higher and higher. Tan Zhongqi laughed. Head palace master, don't flatter him to death. Wushuang does have a lot of good fortune. Only, I am worried that in the end, he still lacks some polishing. To him, the stage of the human countries does not seem to be of much use. Second, it's not right for you to say it this way. Your disciple had risen from the humble class. Indeed, he had faced many difficulties along the way. How could you say that he lacks polishing? From my point of view, Wushuang is the perfect example. If a jade is not polished, it will not amount to anything. This Qin Wushuang had become such a great person because of too much polishing. Tian Zhixing, the 5th palace master, gave a long sigh. 5th, indeed, those polishing did exist. However, it only allowed him to reach his current height. My expectation for Wushuang is not as simple as becoming a hero in the human countries. With his fortune, it would be a pity if he could not go to that forbidden spiritual zone to polish himself and achieve something great. Tan Zhongqi said with a long sigh. Inwardly, he also had some ideas. Second, it seems that you are thinking far ahead. Zhong Muin, the 3rd palace master, laughed. Tan Zhongqi said, if one does not think far ahead, they will have immediate worries. Everyone, I often think about how that Zhuo Tianxi dared to be so arrogant, and how did that 9 palace faction dare to be so arrogant. It's not only because they are the most powerful powerhouses in the merchandise empire. Most importantly, they have the support of the heavenly Luo Taoist sect. They have it, but the Stargaze Palace does not. If the Stargaze Palace has a more powerful powerhouse supporting us than the heavenly Luo Taoist sect, even if the 9 palace faction were 10 times stronger, how could they dare to invade us? When the other palace masters heard his words, they all nodded silently. They must admit that Tan Zhongqi's words made sense. However, Zhuo Buchuan understood him as he nodded. Second's words make sense. In these days, I am also thinking about it. If the Stargaze Palace can also have some connections in the forbidden spiritual zone, At least, in the human countries we can ensure peace. Head Palace Master, what do you mean? Leng Qiuqi, the fourth Palace Master, asked with a stern voice. Zhuobuchuan and Tan Zhongqi looked at each other with a smile and nodded. Zhuobuchuan nodded emotionally. That's right, our intentions are clear. Now that the Stargaze Palace has Qin Wushuang, this rare genius, we can use Wushuang as a stepping stone and seek to form a good relationship with the Forbidden Spiritual Zone. This. Leng Qiuqi drew a breath of cold air and said with a somewhat hesitant tone. Head Palace Master, I don't think it's appropriate. If we let Wushuang seek refuge with the Forbidden Spiritual Zone, it would mean that we would have one less exceptional disciple. This would cause the Stargaze Palace to lose any advantage among the younger generation. Tian Zhixing said with a somewhat agitated tone. Yes, now everyone knows that Qin Wushuang is the biggest star among the younger generation of the Stargaze Palace. Although Wushuang keeps a low profile, there are still many rumors about him in the outside world. Once Qin Wushuang seeks refuge with the major powerhouses of the Forbidden Spiritual Zone, for sure, his reputation as a disciple of the Stargaze Palace would become history. Zhong Wuyin was somewhat anxious. They could also understand their feelings. Currently, Qin Wushuang was the star of the Stargaze Palace. Without Qin Wushuang, the Stargaze Palace would lose a famous star. Zhuobuchuan smiled lightly and did not speak a word as he twisted his beard. He only looked at Tan Zhongqi. However, Tan Zhongqi said, Wushuang is a person who values friendship above all else. As long as he is a disciple of the Stargaze Palace, he would never betray us. If that wasn't the case, how could he have risked his life to make all those heroic contributions for the Stargaze Palace? Although that's the case, I am afraid that he has truly sought refuge with the major powerhouses of the Forbidden Spiritual Zone. Since he wants to recognize the Stargaze Palace, for sure, those major powerhouses would erase all traces of him in the human countries. Tan Zhongqi shook his head. Of course, Wushuang would not forget his roots. As long as his heart leans towards the Stargaze Palace, how could others erase this fact? Head Palace Master, Second Palace Master, it seems that you guys have a card up your sleeve. Do you have any ideas? Zhuobuchuan nodded with a smile. There is one. In the Xian Yuan Mound, rumor has it that there is a powerful Qin clan. They are even more powerful than the heavenly Luo Daoist sect. Since Wushuang has the surname Qin, he might be related to that Qin clan. Thus, I have already pulled some strings. When the time is right, I will recommend Qin Wushuang to the Qin clan of the Xian Yuan Mound. Even more powerful than the heavenly Luo Daoist sect? If that's the case, it would be a great thing to climb up to this level of relationship. Tan Zhongqi laughed. This matter is only a rumor. To put it into action, I am afraid that it would take at least 3 or 5 years to succeed. Now, let's think about how to ensure that the great Luo Empire becomes an upper-ranking empire. All the palace masters nodded. Since Qin Wushuang had arrived at the imperial capital, he had interacted with many of his fellow disciples. He had also locked onto a few suspicious people. However, after Qin Wushuang's investigation, the possibility of them being threats had been eliminated. On this day, Qin Wushuang was walking on the street when suddenly, he received a report from his fellow disciples. They said that outside the East City Gate, Senior Brother Wei Yi was dealing with a group of troublesome guests and needed immediate assistance. When Qin Wushuang received the report, he did not dare to neglect and immediately rushed towards the East City Gate. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please log on to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 384. Just as he arrived at the East Gate, he heard a cold voice. Wei Yi? I heard that you are the most exceptional figure among the young generation of the Stargaze Palace? I don't think you are much. Do you think you can stop us from entering the city by standing guard here? Wei Yi said lightly. I am not standing guard here to stop you guys from entering the city, but to ask you to show me your identity. There are too many people in the Imperial City. We cannot let in people with ulterior motive. The cold voice sneered. Proof of identity? You must be qualified to check it. Wei Yi, don't say that I am looking down on you. You are not qualified. Wei Yi was not in a rush to speak, but Zhao Muji's voice came first. Senior Brother Wei, don't talk nonsense with this guy. He is talking about qualifications in the Great Luo territory. It's really baffling. Qin Wushuang walked out of the city slowly. Instead, he was not in a rush to show himself. Instead, he looked at that group of people coldly from behind the crowd. The clothes of this group of people were all fiery red. Qin Wushuang's heart skipped a beat when he saw them. From their clothing, they were disciples of the Nine Palace faction. Among the people at the scene, Qin Wushuang had interacted with the disciples of the Nine Palace faction a few times at the Heavenly Lake Empire. Of course, he recognized them. However, Wei Yi and the others had never interacted with the disciples of the Nine Palace faction. Thus, they did not recognize them. Disciples of the Nine Palace faction dare to come here openly? Qin Wushuang thought quickly as he could not understand. What do they want to do? For your information, after that huge battle between the Stargaze Palace and the Nine Palace faction, the two sides had formed a blood feud that could not be repaired. The Nine Palace faction had lost most of their elite warriors in that battle. They would not be able to recover without a few dozen years. Reasonably speaking, after such a heavy loss, the Nine Palace faction should have concealed their strength and bided their time. Why were the disciples of the Nine Palace faction swaggering into the Great Luo? Each of these people had extraordinary strength. Although there were only 6 of them, Qin Wushuang saw that none of them were at the initial stage of the spiritual martial force. Each of them was at the middle stage, and the leader seemed to be at the advanced stage. Without a doubt, this group of people were the most outstanding ones among the young generation of the Nine Palace faction. Why would a core disciple of the Nine Palace faction come to the Great Luo Empire? Qin Wushuang did not need to think deeply to know that the Nine Palace faction had started to play their cards. However, he didn't know what kind of signal this hand of cards was sending. On the side of the Stargaze Palace, with Wei Yi as the leader, there were Zhao Muji, Lu Xiaonan, and Huang Chaoyang. In terms of strength, he was clearly at a disadvantage. Wei Yi, on the other hand, was calm and unhurried. You are all guests from afar. Although I do not know your origins, I can see that you are all extraordinary. You must be disciples of a large sect from a high-ranking empire. Since you have come to the Great Luo Empire as a guest, we should treat you with courtesy. However, since you are so overbearing, it is unavoidable that you are using your status as guests to bully the host. That young man from the Nine Palace faction laughed coldly. So what if the guest is bullying the host? Okay, if that's the case, the disciples of the Stargaze Palace can only fight to the end. Wei Yi's face turned cold. Instantly, he withdrew his gentle and scholarly expression and replaced it with a face full of coldness. Apparently, he had reached the limit of his tolerance towards the arrogance of these people. The leader of the group laughed out loud. Circle? I want to see how you guys fight. Wei Yi, don't say that we are bullying you, let's be fair. Let's fight at the East Gate. You and I will spar. If you win, the 6 of us will get the hell out of here without saying a word. If you lose, don't ask any questions and let us into the city, how about it? This person went straight to the point and challenged Wei Yi. It was the same as putting Wei Yi in a checkmate. When he challenged Wei Yi with such tone, Wei Yi would have to think twice before refusing. Only, the current Wei Yi was no longer the Wei Yi from 3 years ago. In these 3 years, with Qin Wushuang's encouragement, he had clearly matured mentally. Of course, he would not lose his sense of propriety because of this provocation. He sized these 6 people up coldly and said lightly, "Being a disciple of the Stargaze Palace, I have a heavy responsibility in these days. If each group of people that enter the city wants to spar with me, then even if I have 100 clones, it would not be enough. Your Excellency, are you deliberately looking for trouble?" "Just think of it as me looking for trouble." That person was straightforward. Wei Yi nodded. "Since you are looking for trouble, you won't cry and beg the seniors of the sect when you make a mess, right?" That person laughed coldly. "I am afraid that you will cry and complain." Wei Yi laughed leisurely. "Me? Who told you that I am going to play with you?" "Junior brother Qin, since you are here, you can't just watch the show, right?" Qin Wushuang already knew that Wei Yi had discovered him. He chuckled and walked out from behind the crowd. He cupped his hands in a salute to his fellow disciples. "Nice to meet you all, senior brothers. Junior brother Qin, you are here." Overjoyed, Zhao Muji walked up. "Weren't you in solitary training during this time? How come you have time to come down the mountain?" "The sect is in need of people. I would not dare to stay out of trouble alone." Qin Wushuang sighed with emotion as if he was joking. At the same time, he sized that disciple of the 9 Palace and said with a playful tone, "Senior brothers, do you know where these people in red robes came from? Junior brother Qin, you know?" Zhao Muji glanced at those 6 people with some hostility. "I was fortunate enough to see a few people dressed like them on the cliff road at the border of the great Luo Empire. At that time, those people were with Zhu Dazhong of the Archaic Mysteries sect. They were about to ambush me. I am afraid that you would not expect that these people are disciples of the 9 Palace faction." 9 Palace faction? Even Wei Yi had a look of disbelief on his face. He looked at the 6 people with even more vigilance. After Qin Wushuang had exposed the identities of those 6 people of the 9 Palace faction, and hearing them calling him Junior Brother Qin, of course, they had connected the dots with Qin Wushuang's identity. "Qin Wushuang?" that leading disciple of the 9 Palace faction said with a cold tone. He spoke with a thick hostility and his eyes were filled with murderous intentions. Yes. Qin Wushuang did not show the slightest fear. He had even killed elite warriors of the 9 Palace faction, not to mention these young disciples of the 9 Palace faction. When those 6 disciples of the 9 Palace faction heard him admit his identity, a hazy expression flashed across their faces. That leading person laughed. "Okay, I heard that there is a Qin Wushuang in the Stargaze Palace. He is demonic. Now, it seems that hearing about him is not as good as meeting him in person. Qin Wushuang, Wei Yi, which one of you is in charge? Pick the one who can make the decision. For us disciples of the Stargaze Palace, everyone can make the decision." Qin Wushuang spoke first. "Okay, then when the Great Luo is crowning an upper-ranking empire, could it be that the people of the Red Dragon Empire are not qualified to attend the ceremony?" That disciple changed his tone and began to reason. "Of course, the Stargaze Palace welcomes you to attend the ceremony. However, if you are here to cause trouble, it would be a different matter." "A moment ago, didn't you say that you wanted to spar with me?" Qin Wushuang said lightly. That leading person laughed coldly. "A spar? I couldn't ask for more. Qin Wushuang, I only heard that you have a powerful bird bow. Do you plan to use it to deal with me?" Qin Wushuang smiled lightly. "If you are at the perfect stage, you are worthy of my bow. However, are you at the perfect stage?" A moment ago, this guy had said that he was a disciple of the Stargaze Palace, and that way he was not qualified to investigate his identity. Qin Wushuang was returning an eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth. He was also talking about qualifications with the other party. That person was rather cunning and did not fall for it. He laughed. "If you don't use that bird bow and can beat me with your own strength, then again, the 6 of us will get lost." Qin Wushuang said with a cold tone. Get lost with my tail between my legs? Since you are here as guests, why should you get lost? Moreover, isn't such a bet a little too insignificant? Then how much do you want to bet? That person was interested. He was the strongest person among the young generation of the Nine Palace faction. He was also at the advanced stage. Among the young generation of disciples in the human countries, he believed that he would not lose to anyone. As long as Qin Wushuang did not use that graceful spiritual bow, he did not think that he would lose. I still believe in that sentence, those who humiliate others will be humiliated by others. The few of you are obviously seeking your own humiliation by boldly gathering a crowd to cause trouble here. Since you are seeking your own humiliation, if I don't satisfy you, wouldn't I be wasting your hard journey? Qin Wushuang said with a leisurely tone. A sharp light flashed across that person's eyes. Such a nice way of saying seeking your own humiliation. Let me see who is the one seeking their own humiliation. Qin Wushuang, you set the bet. Apparently, these 6 disciples of the Nine Palace faction had something to rely on since they dared to make trouble here without any restraint. Zhuo Tianxi was their biggest support. This time, Zhuo Tianxi had come out personally and kept a low profile. He had sent the young generation disciples to dampen the spirit of the Stargaze Palace. It was also the first step of Zhuo Tianxi's revenge. The wager is very simple. If you lose, the 6 of you will crawl into the city from here like dogs. Qin Wushuang's tone carried a few traces of resentment. He also saw that the Nine Palace faction was deliberately making trouble. Since the Nine Palace had made their move, how could they show off the power of the Stargaze Palace if they did not fight back? An eye for an eye, a tooth for a tooth, that was the right way to go. That leading disciple laughed. What if you lose? Qin Wushuang said lightly. If I lose, you can decide how to deal with it. Okay. That person shouted. I will not take advantage of you. If you lose, all the disciples of the Stargaze Palace will crawl under my legs and escort us into the city. Qin Wushuang said lightly. Okay. However, that person was trying to drive a wedge between them as he asked with evil intentions. Are you sure you can represent them? Wei Yi and Zhao Muji said in unison. Disciples of the Stargaze Palace advance and retreat together. One person can speak for all the disciples. Those disciples of the Nine Palace all sneered. They knew the strength of their senior brother too well. Their senior brother was much more powerful than most of the 12 elders of the Nine Palace. For a nouveau riche like the Stargaze Palace, even if they had some support, how much foundation could they have? If this Qin Wushuang did not use that damn bow, how could he compete with their senior brother? To be continued. If you want to know what will happen next, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 385. A trace of astonishment emerged on Yin Yinchuan's face. It was the first time, ever since he had stepped onto the path of martial arts, it was the first time that he was at a disadvantage when sparring with someone from the younger generation. He did not even see how the other party had attacked, and the power of his 3 punches had been rebounded. For such method, even his teacher, Zhuo Tianxi, had never mastered it. Yin Yinchuan, don't underestimate the enemy. This Qin Wushuang is not an ordinary disciple of the Stargaze Palace. Zhuo Tianxi was hiding in a corner of the city gate. He did not expose himself and sent his voice to remind him. This was his first step to defeating the great Luo Empire. He would defeat the Stargaze Palace in terms of the younger generation disciples. Then, he would step out and kill all 5 palace masters during the coronation ceremony. From beginning to end, he would push the Stargaze Palace into a bottomless abyss. This time, Zhuo Tianxi had thought through it carefully. He knew that although it sounded beautiful to kill all the people of the Stargaze Palace, it would not work. Firstly, for sure, the other countries would fear him and form a bad impression of him as a cruel and murderous person. Secondly, if he acted too forcefully, it would cause dissatisfaction from the other countries. They would form an alliance to target the Nine Palace and the Red Dragon Empire. From beginning to end, the Nine Palace did not have a firm foothold when dealing with the Stargaze Palace. It could be said that they did not have a good reason to act. Thus, it was different from when the Stargaze Palace destroyed the Archaic Mysteries sect. Regardless of morality or law, the Stargaze Palace had gained the upper hand by destroying the Archaic Mysteries sect. From the perspective of law and morality, the Archaic Mysteries sect had destroyed the alliance between the three empires and attracted the Nine Palace to intervene in the east. It was reasonable for the Stargaze Palace to retaliate and destroy the Archaic Mysteries sect. However, the Nine Palace faction did not have such righteousness. Initially, they had become enemies with the Stargaze Palace because of their greed for the East and the endless Eastern Sea. This time, it was not a private fight. Clearly, it would not work to destroy the Stargaze Palace before all those powerhouses from the great empires. However, it was possible to challenge the 5 palace masters in the name of suppression and revenge. Once they made a move, they would kill the 5 palace masters. The Stargaze Palace would be like a group of dragons without a leader and would collapse. This plan was much more rational than the last time he had acted rashly. Hearing Zhuotianxi's warning, Hong Yinchuan's heart shuddered. When he was fighting with Qin Wushuang just now, he had indeed underestimated him. It was only because from beginning to end, Qin Wushuang had not shown any skills that could compete with him head-on. In this way, it was inevitable that he would become somewhat careless. What he didn't know was that Qin Wushuang was testing his strength and his spiritual power. After this test, Qin Wushuang naturally had a deeper understanding of Han Yinchuan's method. Seeing Hong Yinchuan hurriedly take 2 steps forward from the sidelines, Qin Wushuang laughed sarcastically. "Don't be in such a hurry to come forward. Stepping on the sidelines won't make you lose for no reason. If we want to beat you to the next round, we have to do it fair and square. Everyone can see it clearly and there shouldn't be any dispute." With an ashen face, Hong Yinchuan did not speak a word. Now, he realized that the more he spoke, the more likely he would make mistake. From beginning to end, this Qin Wushuang was a master at acting. A moment ago, he had tried to keep a low profile and almost fell for his trick. Since he had suffered once, of course, Hong Yinchuan would not suffer a second time. He grabbed with his right hand from his back and whipped out 2 short sticks. Grabbing one in each hand, he connected them in the middle, forming a long staff. With the long stick in his hand, he shook it in the air. On one end of the stick, with a flash of light, a spear head protruded from it. This spear head was extremely bright and carried a trace of coldness. Just by looking at it, one would feel that it had the power to capture one's soul. Hong Yinchuan spat out the spearhead and pulled out a few spear shadows. The tip of the spear suddenly let out a strange noise, shaking the void and causing it to emit a series of whistling sounds. "Qin Wushuang, let my wind and cloud spear send you on your way." Before the voice stopped, the spear aura was already formed. His arm suddenly stretched out as if it had suddenly become infinitely long. A wind and cloud spear suddenly pierced through the void a few feet away. It carried a cold light and condensed into a fatal attack airflow. It rolled over like a whirlwind sweeping away the clouds. When this cold glint condensed, it immediately produced a strong cold intent, as if it could freeze a person's soul. Although it was a bit far away, but wherever it went, the air in the air was condensed into a line of ice, making chi-chi-chi-chi sounds. Qin Wushuang drew back the corner of his mouth and swung his sleeve. He suddenly urged his aura and a wave of sun flame shot out from his palm. With a hula sound, it swallowed the line of ice. At the same time, Qin Wushuang's body suddenly curled up and disappeared from the spot. 1, 2, 3, one after another, afterimages continuously appeared in the circle. These afterimages lingered for a moment before disappearing into nothingness. But even so, it made Hong Yinchuan's spear aura miss. Hong Yinchuan was not depressed. The corner of his mouth slightly moved, revealing a somewhat playful smile. Suddenly, he said, "Since you like to dodge, then I'll make it so that you can't dodge." As his voice fell, the spear aura rose and swept through the air. Suddenly, the air was full of spear shadows. Hong Yinchuan's body moved quickly. The wind and cloud spear in his hand was like a flying dragon or a snake, dancing and dancing in the air. Every time it swept, it seemed to add a lock to this area of 10 feet. This lock, one lock after another, continued to be added. In a short moment, the entire void was locked. Chuan's spear light moved and countless attacking airflows were launched towards Qin Wushuang. The space of 10 feet was divided into countless small spaces by these airflows. This made Qin Wushuang's area of activity suddenly become much smaller. However, Qin Wushuang's figure suddenly froze. Countless afterimages suddenly condensed in one place. Qin Wushuang's figure stopped and landed in a corner behind him. Even so, there was still a trace of a casual smile on the corner of his mouth. It was as if everything was still under his control in this terrible situation. "Mister, I've waited for you for so long. Is this all the Nine Palace faction has? Is this the ultimate move that the #1 disciple of the Nine Palace faction is so proud of?" Qin Wushuang's tone did not conceal his sarcasm at all. "Next, it's my turn to attack." Hong Yinchuan sneered. "I'm not afraid of you attacking, I'm just afraid that you'll be a coward." Qin Wushuang said lightly, "I won't attack. I'll let you attack a few more times and then you'll experience how weak you are. If I attack, I won't need you to be so complicated and long-winded. Within 3 moves, I'll definitely make you fly out of this circle. If not, then I'll admit defeat." These words were powerful and lofty. It was as if this #1 disciple of the Nine Palace faction was nothing more than grass in his eyes. Suddenly, Hong Yinchuan's face turned cold. 3 moves? Kid, you are so arrogant." Qin Wushuang laughed. "I'm not being arrogant, I'm just stating a fact." After he had finished speaking, he pulled out the Fury Dragon Soul from his hand. As soon as this Fury Dragon Soul was in Qin Wushuang's hand, instantly, like a spiritual beast that had been awakened, it rolled in the air with a majestic temperament. Before it had made a move, it had already carried a strong sense of devouring. First move. Qin Wushuang gave a light chant and started to move. He swept his arm and without any fancy moves, he swept the whip at Hong Yinchuan. Halfway through, this whip had transformed into countless waves of sweeping power and released all the space that was locked by Hong Yinchuan. With a whoosh, the power of this whip had transformed into a 10,000-meter long wave that covered Hong Yinchuan's head. Hong Yinchuan asked himself. His wind and cloud spear was already powerful enough in terms of temperament. After all, it was a weapon at the perfect stage. However, when Qin Wushuang's whip came over, he instantly experienced what true temperament was. Indeed, this whip was surging violently like the mountains and the sea. It was not something his wind and cloud spear could take. He immediately followed the power of this whip and retreated to the side at a high speed. When Qin Wushuang saw this scene, he said lightly, "Second move." With a crashing sound, the entire Fury Dragon Soul swept towards the ground like a drilling dragon. Like a carpet attack, it swept towards the ground. This sweep was filled with profoundness. It had cut off all of Hong Yinchuan's escape routes. When the power of this whip attack was unleashed, the entire 3 feet of the ground was instantly covered with reverse currents. It was as if there was 5 times the gravity. Once one fell into it, most likely one would not even be able to lift one's feet. Hong Yinchuan was frightened out of his wits. Now, he finally realized how terrifying his opponent was. He danced in the air and supported himself with the wind and cloud spear. Like a hawk, his body kept spinning in the air as he tried to get away from Qin Wushuang's sweeping power. Qin Wushuang raised the corner of his mouth slightly and said with an indifferent tone, "Third move." As soon as he had finished speaking these 3 words, Qin Wushuang's temperament instantly changed. It was as if he had suddenly turned into an angry King Kong that gushed out endless power. The whip flew from the ground to the sky. Vaguely, the Fury Dragon's soul seemed to have regained its vitality and was bestowed with true life. Like the resurrected Fury Dragon, it swallowed the clouds and spat out fog to sweep towards the sky. Flying dragon in the sky. This attack was earth-shattering. This attack was capable of swallowing the galaxy. Regardless of how much Hong Yinchuan could move, before this powerful swallowing power, he instantly became dim. His entire body seemed to have been pulled by an invisible power as he fell at a high speed. Following this falling momentum, Qin Wushuang rolled and wrapped Hong Yinchuan in the air. He wrapped him tightly and threw him towards the ground. Boom! A wave of dust on the ground spread to the 2 sides. Like a speeding train, Hong Yinchuan's body charged forward. Boom! When his body touched the ground, he had fallen at least 10 meters away. Almost at the same time, cheers came from all around. However, the disciples of the 9 Palace faction could not accept the reality in front of them. After Qin Wushuang had taken out the Fury Dragon's soul, in just a few breaths, the situation of the battle had taken a shocking turn. 3 moves, it was really 3 moves. And it was 3 moves in one go. It was as if the plot had been planned from the beginning. Hong Yinchuan did not even have the time to react before he was thrown out of the circle. This defeat came suddenly and dramatically. Almost when Hong Yinchuan's temperament was at its peak and he thought that victory was in his grasp, the situation suddenly changed and he was instantly defeated. Hong Yinchuan's body fell to the ground. He spat out a mouthful of blood and his face was ashen. To be continued. If you want to know what happened next, please go to www.chidian.com, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 386. Above the city gate of the great Luo Empire, cheers thundered. Victory, Qin Wushuang had won, and the enemy had lost. Most importantly, Qin Wushuang had won honorably, and the enemy had lost without any temper. Qin Wushuang glanced across all the people of the 9 Palace with his sharp eyes. Then, he looked at Hong Yinchuan coldly without a trace of pity. Instead, he had the pleasure of beating a drowning dog. "Mister, you have lost. I believe you haven't forgotten the bet from before, right?" As soon as Qin Wushuang waved his hand, those people guarding the city immediately understood. Each of them was beaming with joy as they opened up a path before the 6 disciples of the 9 Palace faction. Zhao Muji said with extreme pleasure, "Friends of the 9 Palace, please come in. Weren't you guys in a hurry to enter the city? Please, please, this time, no one will stop you." In the previous bet, if the 9 Palace had lost, they would have to crawl into the imperial capital like a dog. Although this bet appeared somewhat childish, it reflected the hatred between the Stargaze Palace and the 9 Palace faction. In fact, it had reached an irreconcilable stage. Inwardly, Hong Yinchuan felt depressed. Up to this point, he still did not understand how he had lost so thoroughly. It seemed that he did not even have a chance to resist. Could this Qin Wushuang be at the perfect stage? Hong Yinchuan felt extremely depressed. This time, he had come with his teacher's order and had a heavy responsibility. Initially, he thought he could defeat the Stargaze and fight this first battle for his teacher. Unexpectedly, he had fallen into such a sorry state. Swatiensi's scolding came into his ears. "Indeed, you are useless. I told you not to underestimate the enemy, yet you were still so careless. Get the hell out of here, are you going to make a fool of yourself?" Hong Yinchuan suddenly realized when he heard this scolding. He said coldly, "Qin Wushuang, you win. You won with an unfair advantage by relying on your weapon. Today we will not enter the city. The next time we come, I hope it won't be a scene of blood flowing like a river." This was an undisguised threat. Qin Wushuang, on the other hand, gave a carefree smile. "So your excellency is planning to run away with your tail between your legs?" With an ashen face, Hong Yinchuan waved his hand, and those disciples of the Nine Palace faction lost their momentum. They followed behind Hong Yinchuan and ran out of the city gate. Zhao Muji and the others all laughed. On top of the city gate, the guards booed. Apparently, they were very dissatisfied with the Nine Palace faction's action of breaking their promise. "Senior Brother Wei, is this all that the Nine Palace has?" His words were like farts. After losing, he didn't even have the courage to honor the bet. How strange. How could such a rogue force become the pillar of support for the three great empires of the human countries? Zhao Muji's words were echoed by the other disciples of the same sect. "Senior Brother Zhao, you don't understand. The Nine Palace faction has always been a scoundrel. Haha, it's actually the same thing if you don't crawl into the city gates like a dog and run away with your tail between your legs. Anyway, we're all learning from dogs." Hong Yinchuan was furious, but he did not have the face to return. He treated it as a passing wind and turned a deaf ear to it, quickly leaving. This time, they all had important missions in the great Luo Empire. Although they had lost here, they still had other missions to complete. Since they were called away by Zhuotianxi, of course, they did not dare to cause any more trouble. As Qin Wushuang watched Hong Yinchuan and the others leave, he could not relax. To put it bluntly, this was only a small episode. For sure, the Nine Palace faction would have something else, and it would be a big move, completely different from this small fight. At this time, Bao Bao also crawled out from the ground and jumped onto Qin Wushuang's shoulder. Qin Wushuang whispered in beast language, "How was it?" Bao Bao said with a cautious tone, "There was a wave of powerful aura hiding in the dark. I could feel that it was Zhuotianxi." "So it was him?" Qin Wushuang's heart sank again. "It's him, that's right. And for sure, this Zhuotianxi is more powerful than before. If he did not send his voice to that head disciple of the Nine Palace faction, I would not have sensed his presence. A few times he had the urge to show himself. However, each time, I would emit some of my aura to make him feel suspicious and not dare to show himself." There was a trace of mischievousness in Bao Bao's tone. Zhuotianxi was more powerful than before. This was the news that gave Qin Wushuang a bigger headache. At that time, Zhuotianxi was already at the peak of the perfect stage. Now, for sure, he was at the void martial stage. In fact, Qin Wushuang was mentally prepared for all of this. Since Zhuotianxi dared to make a comeback, for sure, his strength had increased tremendously. Or else, he would not have come back to humiliate himself. Only, when he thought about how Zhuotianxi had entered the void martial stage, he felt somewhat worried. Luo Yun and Miss Mu Rong had already given him the answer of how powerful an elite warrior at the void martial stage was. Although Luo Yun had only shown the lowest level of the void martial stage, the refined void martial stage. "Junior brother Qin, what are you thinking about?" When Wei Yi saw Qin Wushuang's serious expression, he walked up and asked with concern. Qin Wushuang relaxed his brow and said with a smile, "Senior Brother Wei, this Nine Palace has not come with good intentions. It seems that the Stargaze Palace will have a great battle this time." "The Nine Palace has risen from the ashes?" Zhao Muji also came over. However, Wei Yi said, "The other people of the Nine Palace are not worth mentioning. I am only afraid that Zhuotianxi had returned with some fortuitous opportunity after going to the Xian Yuan Mound. This would be a disaster." Qin Wushuang nodded coldly and said in a low voice, Earlier, that Zhuo was hiding in the surrounding area. Only, with our strength, we could not sense his presence. Hearing his words, the other disciples' expressions changed drastically. Zhuo is truly here? Zhao Muji was the first one to ask. This guy dared to come last time because he had an elite warrior at the Void Martial stage with him. Could it be that he came alone this time? Doesn't that mean? When he thought of some terrifying possibility, even someone as fearless as Zhao Muji could not help but feel surprised. If that Zhuo had advanced to the Void Martial stage, it would be too difficult for the Stargaze Palace to deal with him. Qin Wushuang waved his hand. Everyone, no need to make wild guesses. Everything will be fine when the time comes. Since the Stargaze Palace can defeat the 9 Palace faction once, we will not be afraid of a second time. Senior brothers, this is a rare opportunity. In a year, us senior brothers rarely get together. How about we find a place to drink? Instantly, this suggestion had swept away all the haze before them and made everyone feel moved. For your information, these core disciples carried the endless expectations of their teachers. Their daily life was training, and they did not have much time to play. They also rarely stepped into the imperial capital of the great Luo Empire. It was even more extravagant to gather and drink together. Hearing Qin Wushuang's suggestion, of course, they agreed with it. After Qin Wushuang and the others had left, the elite warriors of a few powerhouses around the city gate also left. Each of them carried complicated feelings. Among them, the ones with the most complicated feelings were the 9 Raven Temple and the Emperor Buddha Palace. For the 9 Raven Temple, this time, only the head divinity chief and the second divinity chief had come. Some of the young disciples of the next generation were staying at the inn in the city and did not come to join in the fun. Head divinity chief, that Hong Yinchuan is the most exceptional figure among the younger generation of the 9 Palace faction. He is Zhuo first direct disciple and should be extraordinary. Before this Qin Wushuang, although he seemed to have the upper hand, in fact, he seemed to have been completely predicted by his opponent. It seemed that they were not even on the same level. What do you think? The second divinity chief asked carefully. For a long time, the head divinity chief did not speak. He only kept walking with his hands behind his back. After walking for a while, he suddenly stopped. In his eyes, a few rays of light flashed. Second, I know how to judge people. For sure, this Qin Wushuang is the person to revitalize the Stargaze Palace. Although the 9 Palace faction is powerful and Zhuo has advanced to the Void Martial stage, if they remain stubborn and become enemies with this kid, it will be Qin Wushuang who will destroy the 9 Palace faction. Destroy the 9 Palace faction? The second divinity chief drew in a breath of cold air. Head divinity chief, the 9 Palace faction is not the archaic mysteries sect. It's easier said than done to destroy them. Even if we join hands with the Emperor Buddha Palace, I am afraid we cannot do it easily. And they have the heavenly Luo Daoist sect as their backer. To destroy their orthodoxy, wouldn't it be slapping the heavenly Luo Daoist sect's face? From the tone of the second divinity chief, there was some confusion and doubt. However, he also knew that the head divinity chief would not come to a conclusion easily. Second, we need to change our strategy. The head divinity chief did not answer the second divinity chief's question. Instead, he suddenly changed the topic. Change. The second divinity chief was even more confused. How? Regardless of whether Zhuo can suppress the Stargaze Palace or not, we will not agree with him. We will remain neutral until the end. Even if Zhuo can suppress the Stargaze Palace, we will remain neutral. The tone of the head divinity chief was cold and resolute. He did not allow any discussion. At the 9 Raven Temple, the head divinity chief was the absolute authority. Although the other 4 divinity chiefs were on equal footing with him on the surface, in fact, they could only be considered as his assistants. The second divinity chief said stutteringly, "But, Didn't we agree that if Zhuo Tianxi wins, we will agree to suppress the Stargaze Palace together with him? Why not go with the flow and push the boat with the current? No. The head divinity chief gave a long sigh. Could it be because of this Qin Wushuang? The second divinity chief still found it unbelievable. Although a young disciple had exceptional talent, if Zhuo Tianxi had truly advanced to the void martial stage, it would not be difficult for him to destroy the Stargaze Palace, not to mention a young disciple. It's because of this Qin Wushuang, the head divinity chief said concisely. Head divinity chief, aren't you overestimating him? The second divinity chief gave a long sigh. Initially, this Qin Wushuang had gone to our 9 Raven Empire and received the National Scholar Command Plate. Although he has good talent, when the nest is overturned, how can any egg remain intact? Second, trust me, even if Zhuo Tianxi were to die, I would believe it. However, if you were to say that this Qin Wushuang is dead, I would snort disdainfully. Do you know why? Why? The second divinity chief still sounded confused. It's because for this Qin Wushuang's fortune, even if all the strongest people in the upper-ranking empire were added together, they would not even be 1/10 of his fortune. From this young man, I saw a profound feeling as vast as the sea. For sure, a person with such temperament would not be someone with a short life. Second, remember my words today, do not become enemies with the Stargaze Palace, and definitely do not become enemies with Qin Wushuang. The tone of the head divinity chief was even more cold and serious than before. The second divinity chief was well aware of the head divinity chief's ability to judge people. Could it be that Qin Wushuang was truly such a monstrous talent? However, since the head divinity chief had said it this way, he must have his reasons. Since the 9 Raven Temple did not hold any grudges with the Stargaze Palace, why would they seek trouble for no reason? Since the head divinity chief had given the order, of course, he was happy to push the boat along and wait to watch the show. With the 9 Palace faction and Zhuo Tianxi stepping out, why would the 9 Raven Temple need to make a move? To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com, support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 387. Finally, the 10th of October had arrived as promised. Representatives from hundreds of human countries attended the great Luo Empire's conferring ceremony. To put it bluntly, the crowning ceremony of the upper-ranking empire was a self-crowning ceremony. It was because, in the human countries, the upper-ranking empire was the highest existence. According to their status and identity, the representatives from each country had arranged their seats in different places. First, the emperor of the great Luo Empire gave a speech. Of course, it was an official speech. After the emperor had given his speech, the Stargaze Palace started to sing the main theme. Although this ceremony to become an upper-ranking empire was in the name of the royal family, in fact, everyone knew that the strength of a country depended on the supporting powerhouse behind the scenes. For the great Luo, of course, the supporting powerhouse would depend on the Stargaze Palace. With a leisurely expression, Zhuo Buchuan looked around. Before him, many heroes from the human countries had gathered at the great Luo Empire to witness this historic moment. Thank you all for coming from afar. The great Luo has always been kind to people. Regardless of diplomatic relations between countries or personal interactions, we emphasize on harmony. In recent years, the survival situation of the East has been challenged. It has forced the Eastern countries to form an alliance and elect the Stargaze Palace as the leader of the East. For the peace of the East, the Stargaze Palace will not decline. Today, I have invited all of you to be witnesses. From now on, the great Luo will change our banner and become an upper-ranking empire. We will protect the peace of the East. Zhuo Buchuan's voice was clear and distant. It entered each person's ears clearly. Everyone knows that the human countries have always emphasized on those who are capable. It is the same even for the commodity empires. Since the great Luo has been elected as the leader of the East, in terms of strength, the Stargaze Palace has reached the basic requirement of a commodity empire. Zhuobuchuan's tone was neither servile nor overbearing. He knew that this was the crowning ceremony. It was not a low-key occasion. When it was time to be high-profile, one must be. Or else, how could they convince the people? For this crowning ceremony, we have consulted the Nine Raven and the Sky Travel Empire. We have also received a clear reply from these two empires. Thus, in terms of reason, my great Luo Empire has done our homework. These two great empires were also very gracious. The Nine Raven Temple's great divinity chief, and the Emperor Buddha Palace's great palace master had personally come to observe the ceremony. Our great Luo Empire is extremely honored. Everyone's gaze turned towards the Nine Raven Temple and the Emperor Buddha Palace. They were actually curious as to why the Nine Raven Temple and Emperor Buddha Palace were so easy to talk to this time. Are there really no objections at all? Let's invite these two elite warriors to come up to the stage and meet with everyone. How about it? Zhuobuchuan gently rubbed his palms and sent out a sincere invitation. Hearing Zhuobuchuan's public invitation, that head divinity chief and head palace master could not refuse. He stood up with a smile and walked towards the stage. Both of them were peerless powerhouses whose names shook the human countries. As soon as they walked out, their auras immediately stood out from the crowd. Just the temperament that they inadvertently revealed was enough to make everyone who came to watch the ceremony admire them. This was an expert, an absolute expert. Zhuobuchuan cupped his hands in a salute. It's my honor to invite you two to the stage. However, the head divinity chief said with a smile, Palace Master Zhuo, in the future we are on the same level. No need to be so courteous. Palace Master Zhou, what do you think? The head palace master of the Emperor Buddha Palace had the surname Zhou and his name was Zhou Dong. On that day, he had also seen the battle outside the eastern city gate and had witnessed Qin Wushuang's young and promising methods. Only, in terms of judging people, he was much weaker than the head divinity chief of the Nine Raven Temple. Yet, he did not make any changes to his strategy because of Qin Wushuang. Now, he only wanted to see the strategy of the head divinity chief of the Nine Raven Temple and act according to the situation. When he heard the head divinity chief's question, he said with a face full of smiles, Head divinity chief, you are an elite warrior, your words must be true. Since you said it this way, how could you be wrong? Ha ha. The head divinity chief looked at Zhou Dong meaningfully and laughed. Palace Master Zhou, after not seeing you for so many years, you are still so humorous. Congratulations, head divinity chief, you are still as graceful as ever. These two were being courteous with each other. However, Zhuobuchuan laughed. Since you two are the leaders of the strongest sects in the human countries, of course you are much more graceful than others. It's needless to say. Today, it's the Stargaze Palace's face and the great Luo's honor to be able to invite two elite warriors of virtue and virtue. The head divinity chief laughed leisurely. Palace Master Zhuo, you are too polite. I see that your great Luo is extraordinary and the strength of the Stargaze Palace has also improved greatly. Of course, you are worthy of becoming an upper-ranking empire. The Nine Raven Empire does not interact much with the East. However, it would be great if the situation in the East improved because of the existence of the Great Luo. Of course, the Nine Raven Empire will not make things difficult for you. The head divinity chief intended to help the entire Stargaze Palace and form a good relationship. Thus, his words were full of encouragement. Even Zhou Dong didn't expect such a thing to happen. Initially, Zhou Dong thought that for sure, the Nine Raven Temple's strategy would be the same as the Emperor Buddha Palace. He would wait to see the reaction of the Nine Palace. Initially, he would maintain a neutral attitude and wait for the result of the conflict between the Nine Palace and the Stargaze Palace. Then, it would not be too late to make a decision. However, from the performance of the head divinity chief of the Nine Raven Temple, it seemed that he did not plan to be a fence-sitter. Instead, he showed a clear attitude and supported the Stargaze Palace. Why is this? A giant question mark appeared in Zhou Dong's head. He never thought that this time, the Nine Raven Temple would show such a clear attitude. There must be a reason for this abnormal situation. Zhou Dong was a smart person. When he saw the head divinity chief of the Nine Raven Temple acting this way, he already had an idea. At the moment, he pushed the boat with the current and said, just as the head divinity chief said, it would be a wonderful thing if the eastern situation could be improved because of the great Luo's power. Indeed, as Palace Master Zhua said, there are many capable people in the Tianxian land. His words did not sound like he was against it, nor was he openly supporting it. Anyways, his words left some room for discussion. Inwardly, many people from the Stargaze Palace understood the situation when they heard these words. They knew that the attitude of the Emperor Buddha Palace was not as straightforward as the Nine Raven Temple. However, they were not in a rush. The attitude of the Nine Raven Temple could be said to be an unexpected surprise. The ambiguous attitude of the Emperor Buddha Palace was not out of their expectation. Zhuo Buchuan laughed. This time, if the great Luo could not change the situation in the East after becoming an upper-ranking empire, how could we face the alliance that voted us as the alliance leader? You too, for sure, the great Luo will exert all our efforts to make the Eastern land have a brighter future. Before he had finished speaking, thunderous applause came from beneath the stage. Of course, this applause came from those Eastern countries. Firstly, it was to encourage the alliance leader. Secondly, it was a form of support. Amidst the waves of applause, suddenly, a strange and eerie laughter emerged from the sky. This laughter was eerie as if a wave of chilly wind had blown from hell. It made one's hair stand on end when they heard it. Qin Wushuang could not help but touch the graceful spiritual bow. With his powerful spiritual perception, he had already sensed that this cold laughter had come from Zhuo Tianxi. This was the person who had expected him to come. Now, he had finally come. This sneer was not deliberately embellished, nor was it deliberately laughed out loud. However, it was this faintly discernible sneer that forced all the applause to stop. Zhuo Buchuan and Tan Zhongqi looked at each other. Inwardly, they knew that in the end, what would come would come. Indeed, in the sky above the giant empty place, suddenly, a black shadow seemed to have dropped from the sky. It was as if a wave of dark clouds had suddenly dropped from the sky. Without a sound, it turned into a human figure and rolled in the sky. Instantly, Zhuo Tianxi's body appeared before everyone. Zhuo Tianxi stood in the middle of the stage with his hands crossed. He looked at the people of the Stargaze Palace with a cold smile. Zhuo Buchuan, I said that I will be back. Each of Zhuo Tianxi's words was sonorous, as if he was pouring out the anger from his defeat. Zhuo Buchuan said lightly, Zhuo Tianxi, don't do things more than 3 times. This is the 3rd time you have invaded the territory of the great Luo. The previous 2 times I let you leave easily. This time, if you are still here to cause trouble, you must know that the Stargaze Palace is not in the wrong before all these friends. Stop with the nonsense. Zhuo Tianxi did not want to waste his breath. Today, I did not come to discuss whether you are in the wrong or not. As you said a moment ago, in the Tianxian land there are many capable people. How do you define this capable person? Its strength. Your great Luo wants to become an upper-ranking empire. Very well, show me your strength. If you truly have the strength, I will not interfere and will only stay to drink your celebratory wine. However, Tan Zhongqi said with a cold smile, I am sorry, even if it's a celebratory wine, the great Luo does not plan to treat our enemies. Your Nine Palace has invaded the great Luo time and time again. Today you have come with ill intentions. Just state your intentions. Zhuo laughed coldly and glanced at the head divinity chief and Zhou Dong. Then, he asked leisurely, "You too, did you receive the letter I sent you?" The head divinity chief only smiled and did not speak. However, Zhou Dong said, "Of course we received it. It's rare for you two to have such tolerance. For hundreds of years, there hasn't been an upper-ranking empire in the human countries. Now that one has appeared, you two did not even test it and just accepted it? Is it because you two have great tolerance, or have the years of peace and comfort worn down your willpower and you feel that it's better to avoid trouble?" Zhuo did not conceal his mockery. The head divinity chief did not even blink his eyelids and still had that mysterious smile on the corner of his mouth. Of course, he would not explain anything to Zhuo Tianxi had always been quick with his words. There was no need for him to argue with him. On the contrary, Zhou Dong felt somewhat uncomfortable after hearing Zhuo Tianxi's words. However, when he saw the head divinity chief's indifferent reaction, he did not express his opinion. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 388. Today, I don't need your help. You only need to watch me defeat this Stargaze Palace and expose their fake prosperity. I will let them know that they are far from being an upper-ranking empire. Zhuo laughed recklessly and shot a lightning-like gaze at the people of the Stargaze Palace. Zhuo between the Nine Palace and the Stargaze Palace today, the moon will not be full. Qin Wushuang nodded with a faint smile. Today, he had made up his mind. Regardless of how powerful Zhuo background was, he would kill him if he had the chance to. He would eliminate all future troubles. At this point, naturally, Qin Wushuang would not consider hiding his strength. The life and death battle would depend on today's battle with Zhuo. If he could survive this battle, the Stargaze Palace would have no worries. Thus, as a disciple of the Stargaze Palace, he was duty-bound. He also knew that this was the most crucial battle since he had stepped onto the path of martial arts. He only heard Zhuo Buchuan say, "Zhuo, don't do things more than 3 times. The first time, the Nine Palace sent out all their forces and almost lost all of them. You did not learn your lesson. The second time, you invited the elite warriors of the Xian Yuan Mound and they also returned with a face full of dust. You still did not realize your mistake. This is the third time. If the Stargaze Palace allows you to escape unscathed, how would we have the face to stay in the east? For today's battle, the Stargaze Palace can only fight to the death. Everyone, please bear witness to this. Whether the Stargaze Palace gets swept away by Zhuo, or the Stargaze Palace uses the Nine Palace as a stepping stone, it will all depend on this battle. Yes, it will all depend on this battle. The Nine Palace has gone too far, let's fight to the death with them." Qin Wushuang stood up and said in a clear voice. "Zhuo, in the imperial capital, there are many civilians who are unarmed and not martial artists. We will only hurt the innocent if we fight here. You and I are both familiar with the Red Cloud Mountain. Do you dare to fight to the death there?" Initially, the purple flame electric beast had played hide and seek with Zhuo for many days. In the end, he had met up with Qin Wushuang at this Red Cloud Mountain. Back then, Zhuo had fled from Red Cloud Mountain. When Qin Wushuang mentioned Red Cloud Mountain, he naturally had an ulterior motive. He was mocking Zhuo for escaping back then, using this opportunity to attack Zhuo momentum. Zhuo sneered, "Why go to Red Cloud Mountain? If you want to fight, why can't you go anywhere? I think this imperial capital is not bad. It's an honor for those lowly, ant-like commoners to die in a duel between experts." As soon as these words were spoken, everyone's expression changed. Zhuotianxi's tone was relaxed, as if he was talking about something trivial. It was as if the lives of ordinary people were as worthless as grass in his eyes, not worth mentioning at all. Qin Wushuang's expression changed coldly. Zhuotianxi, if you want to slaughter the commoners, there will be no end to this restriction. Unless you wish for the Red Dragon Empire and the Great Luo Empire to be removed from the map, otherwise, you should not speak such deranged words. This is not to show how brave and strong you are, but to show how stupid and abnormal you are. Zhuotianxi laughed and said recklessly, "Fishing for fame, this is fishing for fame. Okay, the Red Cloud Mountain it is. Is the Stargaze going all out, or do you plan to fight one-on-one? When dealing with an enemy, there is no need to think too much. Of course, we will do our best." Qin Wushuang knew that it would not be appropriate for an elite warrior at the palace master level to speak in such situation. For such words, it would not make him lose face. Zhuotianxi said coldly, "Okay, that will save me a lot of trouble. It's best if you all come together." After he had finished speaking, he cupped his hands in a salute to the head divinity chief and Zhou Dong of the Nine Raven Temple. "You two, would you like to go watch the show? Head Zhua, it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. You are going in alone, why do you want to be alone, hero?" Zhou Dong gave a long sigh. Zhuotianxi laughed. "Stop with the nonsense, the winner takes all. I don't expect you guys to suppress the Stargaze Palace together. You guys should know your place and don't think about being a peacemaker. Today, I will not give face to anyone." After he had finished speaking, he condensed his body and dashed into the sky. Like a wave of air, he transformed into the shape of a giant bird and flew forward. In a few jumps, he had disappeared into the distance. Only his voice lingered. "The Red Cloud Mountain is waiting for you guys," Zhuobuchuan said loudly. "Fourth, fifth, you guys will be in charge of receiving all the guests and taking care of the situation. Second, third, and Wushuang, come with me to the Red Cloud Mountain." Zhuobuchuan gave out orders to all the people he had called out. All of them said, "Yes." Zhuobuchuan cupped his hands in a salute to the head divinity chief and Zhou Dong. "You two, today, Zhuotianxi has provoked us again and again. The Stargaze Palace cannot tolerate it anymore. If you are interested, please come and watch. If you are not interested, you can stay here. The Stargaze Palace will not force you." The head divinity chief still said with a carefree expression, "Palace Master Zhou, are you interested?" Zhou Dong thought for a moment. "I am afraid that today's battle will witness the rise of an upper-ranking empire. I am willing to watch." "Okay, then I will go with you." Apparently, the head divinity chief did not show much interest. Qin Wushuang smiled lightly and took the lead to rush out of the city. Since the battle with Zhuotianxi was destined, there was no need to hold back. The Red Cloud Mountain was only a few hundred miles away from the imperial capital. Naturally, it would not take long for them to arrive. After Qin Wushuang left the imperial capital, he called out the purple flame electric beast. However, Bao Bao was not in a rush to transform. "Bao Bao, in a moment, you will be a surprise force. For sure, that Zhuotianxi has entered the void martial stage. That's why he is acting so fearless. For this surprise, it will depend on how you will give it to him." Bao Bao was extremely excited as he scratched his ears and said with great excitement, "Boss Wushuang, if he had also just entered the void martial stage, for sure I can beat him." The purple flame electric beast cried out strangely, "Bao Bao and I will feign an attack. Boss, use the graceful spiritual bow to greet him. We must not give this Zhuotianxi any chance to catch his breath." The strength of an elite warrior at the void martial stage was not to be underestimated. He must not let down his guard. Beneath the Red Cloud Mountain, Zhuotianxi stood on a high ground and watched the people of the Stargaze Palace approaching from afar. 1, 2, 3, 4, a total of 4 from the Stargaze Palace had come. While he was watching, suddenly, a giant figure jumped out from the sky. It was that purple flame electric beast. When the purple flame electric beast fought, he never called out. As soon as he opened his mouth, a mouthful of genuine fire swept towards Zhuotianxi's head. Zhuotianxi laughed coldly. "It's you, you bastard! Since you made fun of me, today I will send you to the Western Paradise." As he spoke, he raised his palm and swallowed the sky. Instantly, countless hand seals appeared and smashed towards the purple flame electric beast. The purple flame electric beast twisted his body and rushed to the sky. Once again, he opened his mouth and spat out mouthful after mouthful of genuine fire into a row, another row, and then a third row. 3 rows of continuous fire circled in the air and rolled into a ring shape. Instantly, it rolled in around Zhuotianxi. Zhuotianxi shouted coldly, "Petty tricks!" In a flash, a blood-red long blade appeared in his hand. The blade was as thin as a feather. He rolled this blade in his hand and immediately, the blade light overflowed in all directions. It rippled with countless destructive golden lights and slashed towards the surrounding area. As soon as this golden light rushed forward, it instantly shattered the 3 rings of fire and shot in all directions. Instantly, half of the mountain was set ablaze. At this moment, Qin Wushuang shook both of his arms and pulled the graceful spiritual bow with all his strength. He shouted, "Watch out for my arrow!" Whoosh! The graceful spiritual bow carried that jade-green arrow and shot out a wave of soul-stirring green light into the sky. It was as if it was going to shatter the sky into pieces with an imposing manner. Boom! The power of this arrow had shocked even Qin Wushuang himself. During these 1 or 2 months of solitary training, he had also tried his best to consolidate his own strength. At the same time, he had also tried to harmonize with the graceful spiritual bow to form a deeper communication and understanding with it. Now it was as if they had a tacit understanding. As soon as he used the graceful spiritual bow, its power had doubled. The power of this arrow was no less than an elite warrior at the perfect stage. It might even surpass it. Wu Shuang, nice archery. Zhuobuchuan and Tan Zhongqi rushed over from behind. When they saw the power of this arrow, they were also impressed. Even when Zhuobuchuan had used this graceful spiritual bow before the mountain gate of the Stargaze Palace, he did not have such power. Even Zhuotianxi's scalp went numb when he heard this piercing sound and saw such temperament. Strange! This Qin Wushuang is so young. How come he seems to be using this bow more tyrannical than when Zhuobuchuan used it? What kind of divine object is this bow and arrow? Carrying many questions, Zhuotianxi's body rolled in the sky and disappeared from his original place. He blended into the sky and escaped. This was the advantage of an elite warrior at the void martial stage compared to one at the spiritual martial force. This was also where they were blessed by nature. Using this method to deal with people of the spirit martial realm was 100% hit. It would never fail. Qin Wushuang shouted, "Everyone be careful, watch out for this guy's sneak attack." Although he reminded them, in fact, he was secretly reminding Bao Bao to use the opportunity to launch a sneak attack. Zhuotianxi's figure disappeared into the sky and floated towards Zhuobuchuan. Just when he was approaching, suddenly, he felt a sense of danger as a terrifying thought flashed across his mind. Where is that golden monkey? While he was thinking, suddenly, he felt an unprecedented sense of danger beneath his feet. Despite being in a hurry, Zhuotianxi did not panic as he flew up into the sky with a wave of temperament. Almost at the same time, Bao Bao rushed out from the ground. He gritted his teeth and looked up into the sky. Zhuotianxi was only 1 step away from being able to react in time. Or else, when Bao Bao came up from the ground, he would only need to open his mouth to bite Zhuotianxi to death. Even if he could not bite him to death, he could make Zhuotianxi lose half of his skin. Zhuotianxi's figure dashed into the sky. Qin Wushuang stabilized his steps and shot another arrow from the sky. With the speed of a shooting star and the temperament of a dragon and tiger, the arrow shot towards Zhuotianxi's figure in the sky with a strong airflow. For this shot, he had grasped the opportunity and targeted Zhuotianxi's weakness. Both Zhuo Buchuan and Tan Zhongqi saw the opportunity. The weapons in their hands also turned into long lights and shot towards the sky with all their strength. Inwardly, Zhuotianxi cursed. He was already careful. However, in a hurry, he was still surrounded by the enemy. The purple flame electric beast jumped back from the distance and brought back the first arrow that Qin Wushuang had shot. This was their strategy. Regardless of the time, they must ensure that Qin Wushuang had enough arrows. They must form a sufficient deterrent force. Today I am somewhat tired, so I will write these 2 chapters. I will let old Nyo fight tomorrow. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com. There are more chapters. Support the author, support the original reading. Chapter 389. After Qin Wushuang had shot out the arrow, he raised the graceful spiritual bow and knocked the other 2 arrows on the bowstring at the same time to maintain enough deterrence. Zhuotianxi was in the middle of the air and could not change hands. He could only straighten his body and dash forward. He planned to use the advantage of space to shake off the enemy. As soon as he opened up the space, he would summon that sealed Void Martial Stage spiritual beast. With an elite warrior at the Void Martial Stage and a spiritual beast at the Void Martial Stage, such combination could win today's battle in one spurt of energy. With the help of the powerful airflow, Zhuotianxi's body already glided to the left at a high speed and prepared to drop. The purple flame electric beast gave a loud roar and his entire body was wrapped in a ball of red light. Suddenly, he dashed forward. His speed was like a cannonball that had been shot out of the barrel and shot towards Zhuotianxi's direction. This was the purple flame electric beast's signature move. Initially, when he was fighting against Luo Yun, the purple flame electric beast had used it. Of course, Zhuotianxi was not unfamiliar with it. Only, it was one thing to see it, and another to defend against it. When this cannonball-like attack arrived, the entire sky was dyed with a wave of red clouds and seemed to have burned half of the sky. Before he had approached, Zhuotianxi felt a wave of scorching heat pouring over him from head to toe. If he was touched by this fiery temperament, most likely, even with his powerful body, he would turn into pus. Again, he twisted his body forcefully and moved to the side. He moved 3 or 4 times in the air and dropped again. His temperament had already dropped to the bottom. And at this moment, Zhuo Buchuan and Tan Zhongqi's weapons came to greet him again. If he was on the ground, the attacks from 2 perfect stage warriors would not pose much of a threat to him. However, in the air, there was a wolf in front of him and a tiger behind him. He was in an embarrassing situation. Thus, when he faced these 2 attacks, it was one disaster after another. He waved the weapon in his hand and a wave of sharp blade spirits swept out, clashed with those 2 meteor-like lights and swept away those 2 attacks. Qin Wushuang narrowed his eyes into a line. Inwardly, he thought that his chance had come. He loosened one of his fingers, and one of the 2 arrows on the bowstring was shot out with an unparalleled momentum towards Zhuotianxi. Zhuotianxi's lungs were about to explode from anger. From the beginning to the end, he didn't even have a chance to breathe before he was surrounded. Moreover, the way the other party fought was clearly trained beforehand. Every move was meticulously calculated, and it could be said that he was completely predicted. As a result, he was unable to display even half of his abilities. His hands and feet were bound, making him feel extremely uncomfortable. Qin Wushuang's arrow was aimed at Zhuo Tianxi's ribs, which was the hardest part for him to defend. At this moment, the only choice left for him was to continue dodging to the side. However, if he continued to dodge like this, the situation would become even more disadvantageous for him. Passively taking a beating was impossible to turn the situation around. However, if he did not dodge, when this powerful arrow arrived, most likely he would be killed even if he was at the void martial stage. Stargaze Palace, if I don't destroy you today, I swear I am not human. Inwardly, Zhuo Tianxi made a vow. He gritted his teeth and rushed forward to dodge this fatal arrow. Just when Zhuo Tianxi's feet were about to touch the ground, suddenly, he felt the soil under his feet loosen. Before he could stabilize his feet, the entire ground under his feet suddenly collapsed with a rumbling sound and a giant hole appeared on the ground. Fortunately, Zhuo Tianxi was skilled. He initiated his temperament and rolled his body into the air. He did not get dragged down by this falling soil. Suddenly, with a rumbling sound, as if the ground had exploded or a volcano had erupted, all the soil soared to the sky. Like a rain of soil, it rained down on Zhuo Tianxi. Each layer of soil seemed to contain a powerful attack power as it attacked Zhuo Tianxi's vital points. Zhuo Tianxi gave a long roar with extreme anger. The degree of depression he felt from this battle was comparable to when he had invaded the Stargaze Palace for the first time. At that time, the Nine Palace faction had suffered continuous attacks and did not even catch a glimpse of the enemy's shadow. And this time, although he knew who the enemy was, from beginning to end, he had been beaten passively and did not even have a chance to catch his breath. Every round of attacks was coordinated very skillfully. One after another, they were all linked together. It could be said that it was flawless. Zhuo Tianxi knew that he must take this attack head-on to create some space for himself. Or else, if he continued to fight like this, even if he did not get hit, he would vomit blood from anger. When he thought here, light surged from his entire body as he initiated all his temperament. He waved the blood-red blade in his hand and swept away all the soil. Bao Bao gave a loud roar and crawled out from the ground again. This time, it was in the shape of a golden monkey. He held a giant stick and stabbed at Zhuo Tianxi from the bottom. Zhuo Tianxi shouted, "Good!" His body fell upside down with his head facing down and legs facing up. He waved his hands and merged the blade light with his body. Then, he slashed down with that giant stick. Bao Bao twitched his mouth into a smile and swept the giant stick horizontally towards Zhuo Tianxi's waist. This stick attack carried the momentum of the void. One could almost see that the air had formed into a whirlpool and rolled towards Zhuo Tianxi. For the second time, the purple flame electric beast picked up the arrow shot by Qin Wushuang. Borrowing Qin Wushuang's power, he condensed his body into a ball again. With a rumbling sound, he shot towards Zhuo Tianxi again. Now, Qin Wushuang held all three arrows in his hand and blocked all of Zhuo Tianxi's escape route. Currently, determination filled his eyes, and there was not a trace of hesitation or doubt. This time, he only had one goal, and that was to kill Zhuo Tianxi. Zhou Dong and the head divinity chief, who were watching the battle from the other side of the Red Cloud Mountain, felt extremely complicated when they saw the desperate situation of this battle. Apparently, the head divinity chief had a more mature grasp of the situation. Thus, when he saw this scene, the shock and complicated feelings he felt was slightly better than Zhou Dong. Head divinity chief, is this Qin Wushuang from the Stargaze Palace truly only 20 years old? Zhou Dong's tone was filled with unwillingness as he spoke with mixed feelings. It was as if he was a parent who saw another family's child was more successful than his own. Inwardly, he felt upset. The head divinity chief nodded. Absolutely. I have investigated this kid many times. His background, all of it proves that he is only 20 years old. A 20-year-old young man is able to participate in a battle of this level. I can only say that in the history of the human countries, this is rare. What do you mean rare? The head divinity chief said with a smile. It's unheard of. The Tianxian land has never lacked geniuses. Although the human countries are at the bottom of the hierarchy, they still have the tradition of geniuses. However, a 20-year-old with such demonic skills, it seems that no one has ever appeared in history. Palace Master Zhou, up to this point, do you know why I have never mentioned opposing the great Luo Empire? It's because of this Qin Wushuang? Zhou Dong said with a cold tone as he pondered deeply. That's right. The head divinity chief said sternly, even if this Qin Wushuang does not improve, at this moment, with the two spiritual beasts next to him, plus his own strength and equipment, it's enough for him to run amok in the human countries. Even if the Nine Palace faction can suppress the Stargaze Palace, what about it? As long as this Qin Wushuang does not die, everything will not end. Think about it, if the three upper-ranking empires join forces to suppress this Stargaze Palace. If Qin Wushuang escapes with his life, with his methods and intelligence, he will become the enemy of the three empires. In the future, would he still have a peaceful life? Zhou Dong pursed his lips tightly and did not answer. Inwardly, he had somewhat understood. I have also heard about this Qin Wushuang. I heard that he came from a subordinate country under the great Luo Empire. The subordinate country he came from had a dispute with the other countries because someone from the other country had killed one of their upper sky martial saints. This Qin Wushuang killed his way from the border to the imperial capital. Along the way, he killed all the elite warriors of that country until he found the culprit. Although to Zhou Dong and the others, this matter was not much. However, just this courage and determination, this ruthlessness and decisiveness, combined with Qin Wushuang's current strength, could form a deadly deterrent force. Hearing Zhou Dong's words, the head divinity chief also nodded seriously. So Palace Head Zhou has also heard of this rumor. Then you should know that he only owed that upper sky martial saint a favor. That little bit of affection could not compare to Qin Wushuang's feelings for the Stargaze Palace. It could not compare to the relationship between Qin Wushuang and Tan Zhongqi. Everything in the Stargaze Palace is Qin Wushuang's reverse scale. Anyways, the Nine Raven Temple did not plan to touch it. There is no need for us to touch it. For sure, there must be a reason for the rise of a powerful powerhouse. The Nine Palace had made that unwise move because they did not know the details. If you gave Zhuo Tianxi a chance to choose again, for sure he would not be the first one to stick his neck out. He would not drag the entire Nine Palace into an irrecoverable situation for the so-called Eastern benefits. Indeed, as the head divinity chief had said, if Zhuo Tianxi had the chance to choose again, he would never become the enemy of the Stargaze Palace. Head divinity chief, what is the origin of that bow and arrow in Qin Wushuang's hand? I can't see such a godly weapon in my eyes. The head divinity chief gave a long sigh. Initially, it is not a good thing for an elite warrior of the spiritual martial force to possess such a powerful weapon. If it were an ordinary person, they would not have the fortune to receive such a powerful weapon. They would lose their fortune and even suffer a backlash. However, this Qin Wushuang had such a powerful weapon and had attracted two powerful spiritual beasts as his companions. Looking at him, he still has the appearance of a lucky star. Thus, it is enough to judge that this Qin Wushuang has a bright future. Perhaps, in the future, he will be the one to save the human countries. Save the human countries? Zhou Dong frowned deeply. Head Zhou, once a crisis occurs in the Tianxian land, the first to suffer would be the human countries. If you have some knowledge of history, you should know that 10,000 years ago, there was a calamity in the human countries. Head divinity chief, you mean? A trace of fear shot out from Zhou Dong's eyes. Being one of the few most powerful giants in the human countries, it was apparent how terrifying it was for Zhou Dong to feel fear. To be continued. If you want to know the future, please go to www.chidian.com, support the author, support the original reading. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.